Cool. Well, dude, thanks for jumping on, man. This will be fun to
Yeah,
do like
yeah.
more fun stuff rather than just all work all day.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. Thank you, and thank you for being patient with me. I got kind of backlogged last week, but yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So it'll
Oh
be
yeah,
fun.
man. No, I'm stoked. This is a big, this is where I get to geek out.
Nice. And this is the
Cool.
100th episode, right? This is
Yes, it
cool.
is. So this is gonna be the 100th episode.
Cool. And if I'm just
Um,
really, you can just replace me with an AI, right? Just
Absolutely.
anything.
I'll AI you out, no problem.
Just
I'll give you like a nice,
here,
sexy
here.
set of hair.
Please, AI, please replace the guest with a much more interesting guest.
I'd be curious to see who it
Some
picks.
someday, man, someday. That's what you're gonna be. Just you're gonna be like, yeah, the video. Just
Oh,
replace this character with somebody else a little bit different. Okay.
I think that someday is going to be a lot sooner than
Well,
we
I mean,
think.
the stuff with Sora, the
Oh
OpenAI
my
Sora
God.
stuff, the videos. It's like a year ago.
Terrifying.
It was a year ago. We were all freaking out about like Will Smith eating spaghetti. That video
Yeah.
clip.
Yep.
He was like, it was like a nightmare. You
And
know,
it's
it's
all
like, oh,
funny
look
and
at
it's all super warpy.
yeah, he's like, you know,
Yeah.
and there's clipping everywhere, you know, and that was just exactly a
Yeah.
year ago. So
And now it's terrifyingly real. Like if you
strap
know
in.
it's AI, you look for it, you're like, oh, I see some weird floating people, the clothes are behaving a little odd, but like you have to look and
Yeah,
notice. And if it's a quick 3 second clip in a movie, you'll never see it.
exactly. Exactly. That you're totally right. See, that's the thing. It's the interspersal of real and
Yeah.
AI that people are gonna miss. They're gonna be like, oh, I didn't realize the past 10 minutes was AI because it's
Yeah.
interspersed with.
I mean, how many times just replace CGI with AI, right? We've all been
Yeah.
fanatics with CGI because I'm a big monster movie fan. So like growing up, I was all Freddy Krueger and Friday the 13th and all the monster movies and everything. So I
Mm,
always wanted to like Tom
yeah,
Savini
me
was like a
too.
huge like hero of mine. I wanted to be a makeup
Yes,
special effects artist growing up.
I had a subscription to Fangoria
Yes, so
magazine.
did I. Exactly.
I'm like, Videodrome. How do they do the thing with the TV and the intestines blowing out and
Yeah.
Debbie Harry like their lips there?
And it was
The whole
always Fangoria
practical
had the ad
effects
for Tom
crazy.
Savini's school of special effects. I was like, oh, I'm totally gonna go to that.
Nice,
Yeah, I
nice.
totally did failed, I guess. No, too. I
He was a
tied
hero.
up too much
He
into
was a hero of
computers.
mine growing up. Yeah, totally.
Oh, dude, he was in every. He made like he was part of every great movie that came out, like in the like early '80s into
Yeah,
the '90s even. And then he
yeah.
started getting roles in movies which were hilarious, like Dust Till Dawn and
That's
stuff.
right.
Where
I
he
was
starts
just
putting
thinking of that. I'm
himself
like,
in.
Dust Till Dawn. That's right. He was like, oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if I'm just getting old or if like the '80s and '90s really just were a better time. I feel like they were. I feel like there's just so much more like almost like mysteriousness out there and unlimited potential. It felt like.
It was definitely weirder. It's just, I really was. I think there was
Mhm.
just like weirder stuff going on, and like things would come out, and you're like, oh my God, I've never, like I remember like the whole Max Headroom thing,
Oh yeah. Well, there was
and
the first
everyone's like,
Max
what?
Headroom hack
Yeah, oh
that
yeah,
played into that, right?
the pirate TV thing too. Yeah,
Yes.
but like I think it was also because like it was harder to do like in-depth research on things because there was no
Oh
internet,
yeah.
right?
Well,
So like weird
that's
shit would come out and you'd be like, I don't know what this is about. And if you were, if you were lucky, maybe you were using dial-up bulletin boards, you'd be like, oh, let me talk to my network of friends or Usenet or something if you were
yeah.
on the edge, but otherwise it's like you couldn't just Google,
No.
you were just kind of like, I don't
Yeah,
know
well,
what's
my
going
friends
on.
and I, when we were learning Linux, we bought a big ass book from the bookstore that came with the Linux CD, and we're like, okay, we're gonna
Nice.
figure this out this
Yeah,
weekend. A month later,
good.
we finally got it working.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that was also like, part of I used to do like on the hacking side of things, I used to do dumpster diving all the time, just like
Yeah,
finding and it was sometimes it was like, hey, let me dumpster dive and see if I can find some special little codes that someone threw out with the trash and forgot to shred, right? But a lot of times it was just for like manuals. It's like, oh my God, look at this manual that you can't find anywhere. There's no
yeah,
eBay. There's no place to Google this information. It's like, oh, shit, here are all the
yep. Well,
manuals
that
for this
was how you got
particular
like the Rainbow
chipset.
books, right?
Well, yeah, yeah, exactly.
So
Oh yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's funny. So last night, okay. So first off, let me actually hold on. Let's start the podcast. it's funny because like you know, so we've known each other now for a little over a year now because from the
Yeah,
blockchain project we're almost to Onero now, which has been pretty awesome. And then it
yeah.
was just a couple weeks ago. I have someone was asking me about Loft, and they're like, "Oh, you know, who are these Loft people you keep talking about?" And I was like, "Dude, they're like the premier hacker group. Like they started like the whole what like how everything works today. Like it's crazy. I can't even like put it into words really." So I was like looking into it, and I was reading an article, and then all of a sudden I saw your picture at the bottom of like, "Oh, look, and here's everyone," and I'm like, "Wait a minute."
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
"Wait, did I this whole time have I known you and had no idea that
I
you're the
probably had
founder of
hair.
Loft?"
Did I have hair in the picture? I used to have long hair, like rocker
It was
hair, you know,
lavish.
lavish locks of hair down my
Yes.
shoulders before the male pattern baldness made me do a preemptive strike and just shave the whole freaking thing
I'm
off.
almost there. I got like a couple years left and then it's gone. So
You'll know when the time is right, Adam. You'll just know, and then you'll
yeah.
just go.
Because you'll be like, ooh, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna be that comb over guy. I'm not gonna do it. I'm just
No,
gonna tattoo my
you'll
head.
know. Everyone knows when it's right. Everyone knows.
Yep. So,
But,
but yeah, so I was looking in like to the background, and I was like, man, I should know a little bit more. This is crazy. And like you were just saying, back in the day, there was no Google, there was no real internet like how we know it. So to find all the information, we had to use bulletin boards. So I actually ran one of Michigan's larger underground like elite wares bulletin boards back in the day.
zero
And
day wears,
yes, baby.
freshly cracked
I had to go meet
wares.
up at like so I first started out my drafting teacher gave me a printout of phone numbers. He's like, "Look, these are bulletin boards. You can call them and you can get Wolfenstein from here." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah,
Cuz that's what we wanted. We just wanted to download Wolfenstein. That was our goal.
right.
And we
That's
had no
right.
idea what a modem was. We're sitting there trying to plug in like our phone cord into the Ethernet port. Not know we were idiots. We were
Yeah,
14 I think at the time when we first figured this whole like
yeah,
BBS thing out.
yeah.
And so then it was okay. We got to get elite access. We got to talk to the sysadmin, and we got to
That's
trade
right.
something that they don't
You
have,
got
so
to
we
get
can.
promoted. That's right. Because it's like I
Yeah,
got no download ratio. I can't
right.
download.
And
I gotta get in the inner circle.
yep. So it's like you're gonna trade. So like my big thing was I was trading anarchy files for
Oh,
access into the elite wares to get my 0 days. That then I would pirate and then transmit over to another one, and then it was fun though. It's like
yeah.
I think my first bulletin board I was running on Renegade. And
Nice. I
then, well,
remember
actually, Tag. I had Tag for like a minute,
tag.
but
Yeah,
then I moved to Renegade, and then from there I went to Oblivion, and then Oblivion
yeah,
was like I think that was like kind of the end of where I ran it from. But yeah, it
yeah.
was fun. I had to meet a sysop at a coffee shop once because I had to do an in-person validation that I wasn't a cop and all this like, and it was just like this fat guy that lives with his mom in his basement. You know, it's like, but it was like, okay, I gotta be cool, man. I got this. I'm gonna get elite access from this guy. I gotta go. And
Yeah,
my mom's like, why are
yeah,
we going to the coffee shop?
yeah. It's like to meet a friend,
Yeah.
a future friend.
But like you're saying, like the manuals, like there were the rainbow books. Those were the things I remember seeing those being like, why is everyone so obsessed with all these phone manuals and all this
Yeah,
phone PBX stuff? I had no idea at the beginning, and then I
yeah,
started reading
yeah,
them, and then I was like, oh man, you can figure some stuff out.
yeah. There was I think we've all had similar journeys like that, back in the
Yeah,
day if you were in the scene. And it was interesting always to me the overlap between the hacker scene and the wares scene,
yeah,
the game scene.
yep,
And there was definitely, they're different, but there was then like this funky overlap, where like sometimes hackers just people who are more on the hacker side wanted just to play a bunch of cool games, but they weren't like they weren't able to, like, they weren't cracking games, but they
yeah,
had other things they could barter with, like, oh, I have these
exactly.
calling card numbers you could use for calling free. And it's like,
Yep,
okay. And or like, here's a little trick you can do to do this or that. And vice versa too, the wares people would be like, hey, I'll trade you this cracked copy of whatever for some access or an account on a university machine that I shouldn't have access to. and
yeah, yeah.
and
Getting shells in places that was a
yeah,
big
yeah, oh,
thing.
I got root on this, give me root on this, oh damn, yeah. But I distinctly remember like going to, because one of the things we did with Loft is we started, um well, I remember talking to Emmanuel Goldstein, the guy who started 2600 magazine.
Yeah,
And they would always have these 2600 magazine meetups in New York, and he was like, John, we want to do something in Boston. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be cool. And so we started having we had these like Loft sponsored 2600 magazine or 2,600 meetups, right?
Yeah.
And they would post the times and the locations in the physical magazine.
Yeah.
It'd be like, Boston, the food court in downtown, near
Yeah.
the chicken store or something, or the chicken
Yep.
fried chicken place, And so like we would have these 2,600 meetups, and and it was always interesting because like there would be like the hacker type people, people like, oh, I made a new red box. Check this out.
Oh yeah.
And then there were the wares people, and it was
Yeah, with
always
all the
kind
floppies.
of,
Like,
yeah, with the floppies. And it's like two different, but it was very two different distinct subcultures that had
yeah.
this really interesting mixing going on, because they were both operating on the fringes of society and pushing in these gray areas, and a lot of times, if there were any crimes happening, they were not crimes for profit. They were typically crimes because people wanted to be able to talk to other people, or they just wanted to
Yeah.
be able to play games that they couldn't afford otherwise.
And
Just
it's,
kids.
look what I did. There's
Yeah,
no
yeah,
to
and
show
also
off
just
half
kind
the
of kids.
time.
Yeah, kids showing off. Yeah, because it's like rep. It's like, oh my God, you're that guy. You're the one who cracked that game. Damn. Like, oh, you're the one who got root on that system. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I heard about you.
And that's when groups started coming about. Like, and that's
Mhm.
and so how about first let's start, because I'm sure there's people watching this, because this is a identity access management security stuff, but I guarantee you most of the people don't have a clue about the old school days of how we all grew up in that. But
Yeah,
so can you kind of go over what L0pht is and how you started it?
that's a good story. So L0pht, the full name being L0pht Heavy Industries,
Yep.
started because me and Brian Oblivion, is his handle, if you remember Videodrome.
Oh yes.
That's his handle.
Oh
I
yeah.
was count zero. I was always count zero. Really
I was the
unique. I
crypt
was like,
keeper. So
nice, nice. Yeah. And at least I didn't pick my name from the Dungeons and Dragons monster manual, which some people did. It's like Crimson
yep.
Death. Where'd you get that name? I got it from the monster manual. Oh my God.
It's not
Please.
cool.
Not the
It's not
D&D
weak, man.
monster manual. At least I picked Gibson novel. But anyway, so Brian Oblivion and I were living in the same brownstone in Boston, the South End. At the time, the South End was sketchy. Now the
Yeah.
South End is all gentrified, but it was a sketchy area. And there were a lot of artist lofts in the space, and a lot of places that were just like cheap, big loft rental places in warehouses, right?
Yeah.
And Brian and I, the time we were both living with our respective girlfriends in the same brownstone. I was like on the first and second, and he was like on the second and third or something. I can't remember. And we were already like in the whole hacker scene. We were like,
Yeah.
going to the MIT flea market in Cambridge and buying weird hardware, and I was already in the Cult of the Dead Cow. We were already doing stuff on our own.
I didn't even know there
Sitting in
was an
our
overlap there until recently.
Oh yeah, Cult of the Dead Cow. Yeah, that was so.
Yep.
That's a whole other story. There's a book
It's a
about
whole
it,
nother
too.
that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, that hacker group. So there's a hacker group, the Cult of the Dead Cow. People are, everyone is used to now being parts of groups that are distributed around the world. But the
Yeah.
original hacker groups were the first ones like that because we were connected via bulletin boards.
Yeah.
Or if we were
Absolutely.
lucky, we would use Telenet or out
Ooh.
dials, bulletin board out dials.
Yeah,
Different.
I couldn't go long distance, so I only talked to Metro Detroit area. So that was
Cool.
my
That's cool.
limitation.
Yeah, and so it was very, it was this interesting environment. But anyway, so Brian and I were already like doing our own hacking things, and had our own little workshop set up in our houses. And of course, we kept getting more and more stuff, like hardware, especially because the MIT flea market was where companies and universities would and MIT itself would like dump
Yeah.
all of this hardware. They try to sell all this hardware at like a yard sale. That's what the MIT flea market is, like radio gear, hey, here's a PDP 1134. Who wants it? Bring a truck, take it away. And all kinds of weird hardware, radio stuff. And so we just kept getting like, oh look, someone's selling a couple Apple IIes. Yeah, we'll take them home. Play around with them or whatever. And it kept filling up our apartment because we were two separate apartments in this brownstone. And I remember like our girlfriends both were kind of like guys because they were close. They were friends, the two women. And they're like, you guys, no, you got to stop this. Is this just like the house is getting full? And so then we would actually start going to the MIT flea market to sell stuff because we had acquired so much.
Yeah.
But it always seemed like no matter what we did, we would go to the MIT market with like a bunch of hardware, and we'd always come back with more. No
With
matter,
more
even if we
stuff,
sold,
exactly.
like we sold a little, but usually what would end up happening was bartering. It's like, yeah, we
Yeah.
got to get rid of this, and they'd be like, oh, that guy's got like a, what is that? Like it's a laser tag commercial setup thing. Oh yeah, let's just play around with that, hack around with it, whatever. And so Brian and I were like, well, we got to find a place. It's just maybe we could just rent a place to put our stuff.
Yeah.
Like and not just hardware and electronics, but like manuals. Because back in the day, it was always like finding these rare manuals. Yeah.
The printouts of dot matrix printouts.
Oh my God, yeah, and all the reams of printouts from all the dumpster diving we would do. It's like, hey, we went behind this AT&T switch building and found all this stuff. Or I remember we'd find like microfiche. You know, it's like, well, someday we got to get a reader to read all this. And so we were looking into it, and we found an artist loft space, literally around the corner from where our brownstone was. Like we would just like walk out of our front door, walk around the corner, go up the stairs, and then there was this huge loft space. And we were like, this is great. And then I remember at the time too, our two partners, they were like they were doing some kind of like arts and crafts stuff, like making hats that they would sell in like stores downtown. And they were like, yeah, we could have space in your loft. Maybe we could have some space in your loft space too, to like do our stuff. Like just give us a table space. So Brian and I were like, that sounds great. You know, everybody wins. You know, we free our space. We free our homes up from all this stuff. Our girlfriends get some space to do some more work that they couldn't do in the homes. And so we moved in, and that was it initially. That was it. And then more and more, like Brian and I are sitting around, and we're looking around, and we're like, holy shit, we've got enough space now to actually set up that PDP 1134.
We need more equipment.
And then it's like, but we just need a little more equipment. And then Brian's like, you know, we could kind of build like library shelves over there for all the books and all this stuff. We could just kind of like put the stuff there. And we're like, okay, cool. So then we started organizing space, and it became like this amazing resource because we just had the physical space to spread out and organize things. And then we started going like with the 2600 magazine meetups. We're like, what if we invited people back here to just
logical step,
hang out, right?
Yeah.
And you could read a manual. You could sit on the couch and watch some, play with the oscilloscope or whatever. And so then that's how it grew. It started out, and over time, what happened was we realized, through talking with people, that we had an opportunity to create what I always would call like a hacker collective space, which today you would call a maker space.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't have that. No one had those back then. There was no term for
it was
what
people's
we had done.
basements.
Yeah, there was no term for what we had done, and we're like, well, we want to have it. It's our space, but we want to open it up to other people. But you got to we're not going to let people off the street, and
right.
And we want to find people who are into working on projects and invite them back and be like, hey, I'm trying to build this thing. You want to come back here and help? Maybe we could collaborate and we could meet at the loft space, Saturday or whatever. And that's how it started. It was a hacker collective. It was very, it wasn't a business at all.
Yeah.
And it was really just a place for people to come together and learn from each other and have a space within which to do it. And in that space, have equipment. It's like, I just wish I had a soldering. Well, come over here. We got a soldering iron. We got a whole bunch of stuff. I need to test this network application. I'm like, well, we've got our own LAN set up here. Just go ahead and test it out. We've got our whole network set up and everything. And we were even doing radio stuff too, because I was always into radio, ham radio, operator, all that stuff. And I was like, I was fooling around with packet radio. I remember in the early days, packet radio was bridging ham radio, being able to send data, TCP/IP data over ham radio bands, right?
Oh, wow.
And so, and I even remember at one point at the MIT FLE, I found the equipment to build a pirate AM radio station out of the loft. I called it WKRAD, K-Rad. Because remember, that was like K-Rad. That was like a phrase back then. K, like radical, K-Rad. It's like K-Rad radio broadcasting live from the South End. And I never knew if anyone ever heard me. But like everyone, like it was sporadically, but I would like go on the air.
So what you're saying is you started the first hacker podcast.
Probably. I was just talking about random. I don't know. I had no idea who listened. If anybody heard me, I knew the signal strength was enough so that I was getting like a few miles
Yeah, makes
radius
sense.
from the antenna that I ran up from the ceiling. But so that's really what it started out as, and it was it became a real phenomenon real fast because then we'd have like people visiting, like people would visit from other places, and we'd be like, hey, let's hang out at the loft. Let's hang out at the loft. Sometimes we let someone sleep on the couch.
Hmm.
It's like someone's coming visiting from New York. Hey, you can sleep on the couch in the loft for a couple nights if you want. We had no kitchen. There was no, the bathroom was in the hallway. It was not for residential living,
Yeah.
these loft spaces. They were just open spaces with no water or anything. It was just electricity. And that was the other thing too, is that utilities were included
Oh,
in
nice.
the.
So you could siphon everything.
Yeah, so we really took advantage of that, especially when I was like, remember I was building like Jacob's ladders. A Jacob's ladder is this thing you create with a high voltage transformer, and it creates this like spark that
The
goes up a
arc that
V.
goes.
It's like,
Yeah.
you see it in all the
The
Frankenstein movies.
Frankenstein movies.
Yeah, and it uses a ton of electricity, and just like, and I remember running those, and it's like, John, you're making a lot of ozone. It's kind of burning my eyes, and then I'm realizing that's a lot of current. And I was like doing the math. I'm like, oh, that was the equivalent of like running 20 washing machines 24 hours for the past week, just running this thing over the weekend or whatever. But
Yeah, but it was cool.
um, but it was cool. So that was the heart of it. It was the name. Um, I I will take credit. I came up with a name. It's like, I'm like, let's call this, because I was always into like branding. I'm like, let's call it the
Yeah.
Loft, but cool, spell it cool, like a
Leet
zero
speak.
PHT Loft.
Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, well, that's the abbreviated version, but we need like a longer name. And I think I was watching Akira, and like his
Hmm.
motorcycle has a sticker. It says like Matsushita Heavy Industries or something. And I'm like,
Oh,
how about
okay.
Loft Heavy Industries? And
Nice.
then you also have initials LHI and L0pht Heavy Industries. And then I
We all
remember at
love
one point
acronyms.
thinking, we need a logo. I'm thinking
Yeah.
branding, right? Because I'm kind of a product guy too, and we need a logo. And so I opened up my pirated copy of Corel Draw, and I'm looking through the clip art because I'm not a freaking artist. I'm like, what would be kind of cool? And I'm like, oh, there's a buzz saw. I like that. That looks hardcore. And then I'm like, okay, buzz saw, circular saw, buzz saw, and then I'll just attach a. Oh, and then here's a clip art of a extension cord. I'll just stick it on there. There we go. L0pht Heavy Industries, just like this buzz saw with an electrical cord coming out of it. Just the
Well,
saw
that
blade.
that logo was a sticker on my desk for years.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. But it's literally,
'Cause-
literally, it was a freaking Corel Draw piece of clip art. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. Looks badass. It's got teeth.
yeah.
Uh, and and that was it. And really, it was, over time, what happened was, it evolved into, some people wanted to. We had people who became members and helped contribute to the rent, and then it got a little more formalized, and then it started turning. There were people who wanted to go, sort of spin it off into a business for security
Yep.
stuff. And that's really when I exited, because at the time I wasn't really interested in it as a business. I was interested in it as a hacker collective. That was my,
Yeah.
in the evolution of everything. There are periods of time where things change over time, and that's cool. That's what happens. Mine was, the inception and maintaining it as a hacker collective, and then it got much more formalized, and eventually spun off into a business, and really started the whole idea of how
Yeah.
security professionals
Security
could
companies.
work.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and which is great, which was fantastic, and it was, but yeah, at its core, it was about education and just uh,
Well, I
getting
think
people
that's one
from
of the
all
big
over the
things is the
place.
misnomer of the word hacker, right? Because like when we say hacker now, everyone has a very clear, concise definition of what a hacker means, right? It's someone breaking into a
Hmm.
system or doing illegal, nefarious stuff. But back in the
No,
day, when we all started this stuff in the early '90s, that's not what hacker meant at all, right? So
no,
what's
no.
like what's your definition of the original like OG hacker? Like meeting up in these groups, and you had your hacker loft. What were hackers then?
Hackers were people. I remember people have asked me this all the time, and I always remember. I come back to the same thing I always think of is a hacker is somebody who, if they're walking down the street and they see a weird box with like some wires hanging out of it, they'll go over there and just open it. They'll be like, "What's going on in there? What is this thing?" that is part of the infrastructure of everything around me, like what the is it doing? Like what is that thing?
Yep.
And everyone else will just be passing by. Or if somebody else will walk by and they'll be like, you shouldn't be touching that. And it's like, why shouldn't I be touching it? I'm not trying to do anything bad. I just want to understand how this thing
Right.
works. And that for me is always the hack. I mean, a hacker is somebody who, if they see something, especially if it's part of the infrastructure of the world, I think that's a critical thing too. I mean, in general, curiosity about how things work is great. But in particular, I think a hacker is somebody who realizes that there's a lot of stuff that we just rely on every day, that we use every day, that we have no clue. Most people have no clue how it works. No clue.
Right.
How
It's
does
magic.
how does this phone work? What is this magical rectangle of glass? Where is the data? How does the data move around? What are the RFs? What's the sea of radio frequency signals that we live in every day? What's being communicated, especially and so in particular, hackers like want to understand that environment,
Yeah.
the opaque environment that is typically either people just don't care about it, or
It's
certain
too hard.
vested interests or certain vested interests don't want you to know too much
Oh,
about how it
true.
really
AT&T,
works.
MCI.
Security through obscurity, right? It's like, well, we don't want you to know how that works, because you'll look at it and you'll go, what the dude? What unencrypted in-band signaling? Okay, you know. Um,
And security, like as we know it now, it definitely wasn't a thing back then. Like people were not securing
no,
their networks and their infrastructure like they do now at all.
no, they had no idea. Oh, and here's a cool anecdote about the loft too, right? Thinking about, okay, so at that time in the loft, I was pursuing the period of time in my life where I was focusing on medical research. Right? I worked at Massachusetts General Hospital. I was doing research in Huntington's disease and Parkinson's. I was working in a lab, wearing a lab
Okay.
coat, building educational systems for the medical school and stuff. But so I was like, I had my day job, right? And then I would go back and play around the loft. And as an example of this sort of not paying attention to security, um, uh, Doom came out. Remember
Yes.
Doom, right?
Right.
And
My
remember the
whole
big
left
thing?
arm is a Doom tattoo. So yeah,
Is it?
I
Dude,
definitely. Oh yes.
you're gonna love this story. You're gonna love this story, right? So we had just this just gives you the good timeline, right? So Doom had just come out, and that was when the loft was really starting to get built out.
Yeah.
Like we started really putting a bunch of equipment in there, and um, we didn't have a network set up yet. We didn't have a LAN set up yet. We
Hmm.
were using, um, we weren't even using like Cat5. We were using like freaking old school coax cabling to
Oh,
network.
yep. I
Like
remember
we had
that.
all the
I forgot
all the
about
equipment. Yeah,
that.
we had coax cabling, and we didn't have we had dumb switches to connect
And didn't you have to
multiple
like
segments.
daisy chain them all together like in a ring,
Mhm.
right, to make
Yes.
that
Yeah.
happen?
Ring
This is
topography. Yeah, you
old
could do all kinds of shit,
stuff.
right? And so we had all the equipment that we needed. We had all the hardware. I had actually had scavenged a bunch of like most of the equipment to do the first local area network at the loft. I'd scavenged it from work, actually from Mass General. They were throwing shit out, and I'm like, hey, I could use this old switch. Take it home. And
Yep.
but it was lying in a pile, and we had all the cabling, and then we were like figuring out how to bridge it to the internet, so we can that was the second step, because there were no ISPs really back then. You had to kind of do
No.
some funky stuff with universities and dial-ups and
Yeah.
T1 lines. But anyway, we're like, we got to get our own local area network together. But we weren't getting our shit together because it was anarchic. It was kind of, which is fun, but not always efficient in getting things done
That
on a
was part of the
timeline.
community back then too.
Yeah. And so anyway, Doom comes out, and we're like, oh my God, we're all playing Doom. And then I remember at some point someone goes, they just released multiplayer Doom. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? What? It's like, yeah, you can run it on a LAN. And we're looking at each other, and I'm like, we need to get this LAN up now so we can play Doom. And so that's what motivated us to get the network finally
Yeah.
up. The first network in the loft was Doom multiplayer. And so like then we were like all playing, we were like playing Doom, and we're like having fun. And then I can't remember who it was, but somebody was like, because we're all nerds, and someone was like, packet sniffing, paying attention to
Yeah.
what's happening to our network, and someone's like, this is weird. And I'm like, what? He's like, it's kicking things into it's sending out multicast packets. It's going into multicast, but it's like the stupidest. And I can't remember if it was a bug or if it was just at the time, like the people,
Who
when they
cares?
produced,
Yeah.
when they released it, they didn't care. But anyway, going into sending out multicast packets basically causes like, it makes every single network card on the network like pay attention to what the hell's going on, and it can slow shit down really
Yeah.
bad. It can like have this weird cascade effects where the whole network just slows down because
Okay.
everybody on the network's going, "What's this super important packet?" And it's a doom packet for like, turn left
Well,
and shoot. And I remember thinking we're like, wow, this could be really bad. This could be like an attack. You could use Doom in multicast mode as an attack on a network,
yep.
like run a few clients, and then the whole network will just go boom. And I remember, and I was like, yeah, that's really bad. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna field test this. So I took it to work to the Mass General, and I installed it on a few machines in my lab. And I'm like, let's just see what happens. I got into I people were freaking out, like, because I got like IT people were like, what the hell's going on, John? The whole east end of the building, like, just all the machines just went down. And so anyway, I was like, can't you filter these packets out? I mean, I assumed that
Yeah.
my local network at the hospital, no patients were involved, by the way. I was doing this in a research.
Little
This was
asterisk
not
there.
I was not testing this out I was testing this out in Charlestown Navy Yard, the research building at Mass General. No patients, right?
Yeah.
But the IT people, like, this alarms started going off, and they're like, because they already knew me, because I was already like screwing around with tech stuff, and they're like, John, are you doing something? I'm like, yeah.
You're the first phone
Like,
call.
you're killing the entire network in the building. I'm like, but the point is, coming full circle, is like, they had never expected anything like that could happen. And I'm like, don't you guys have like security to filter it out? And they're like, no, we don't. We don't have the ability to shut down segments like that. And I'm like, maybe you should,
Yeah.
because this is freeware. This is
Yep.
something I could just download off a bulletin board. Anyone could install on a few machines. And imagine if somebody had done this on the clinical side of the house at the time. And they're like, yeah, we got to get on this. So, but this was back in the day, no, I'm not slamming them at all. This was back in the day when no one was paying attention to that
Yeah. Because
stuff,
they were thinking
really.
people were just going to dial each other, set up like a little LAN party, 3, 4 computers all plugged in together.
Yeah,
I don't.
yeah.
I
So
don't
those
think
early
they thought
days.
it was going to take
Right.
off. Like, I don't think it thought they were going to take off as much as they really did until Doom came
Oh
out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It did nothing malicious. Nobody did anything
Oh.
malicious here. Then
Yeah.
it was just, oh yeah, that will up a big network. And I'm swearing a lot. I hope that doesn't get. If you want me to, if
No.
I can tone it
I swear
down.
all
If
the
you're gonna
time.
bleep in it.
It doesn't fucking
Okay,
matter.
good, good, good. I get salty sometimes on Fridays, but it's hard for people who weren't there to understand the extreme sort of pushing boundaries at that period of time, right? Because
Yeah.
here you have the beginnings of when the world is starting to get interconnected. People are starting, the web suddenly becomes a thing, right? And there was all this interconnectivity being created, and of course people were just focusing on connecting everything, and they weren't focusing on
Preventing.
how can we make this really secure and
Yeah.
safe. And it was just pushing boundaries, which was beautiful at the time. And and i and I remember too, the hacker mentality was always like, you're not doing anything, you're not an agent of chaos. If anything,
Most people weren't.
you're yeah, yeah, you're trying to you want to make things better. It's like, let's just fix this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want, if you find a vulnerability, let's fix it. And that over time, is what seeped into the culture and developed into, computer security companies and things like penetration testing, like pen testing, which
Yep.
there was no term for that back
No.
then. There's no pen testing. I'm red teaming. What does that mean? What?
Yeah. It's funny to watch this evolve because it's like when I was like, I'm like, wait, when I was a kid, this is just us just fussing around, just seeing what kind of stuff we could get into, and now it's like it's a business term that's used by enterprises to, and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, but hey, it's definitely a business. The world lives online now, and I feel like all of us back then saw that was 100% what was going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it scared some of us. It scared the shit out of me.
Yeah.
There's a really great I'll send you the link too. But every once in a while, like, old clips will surface from like the late '90s or early two or yeah, mostly the late '90s, of like interviews, and one of them was it was a PBS Frontline special. I think it was 2001 maybe, or I can't remember. I think I still had long hair back then, so it was probably late '90s before I shaved it off. And there's a PBS Frontline special on hackers, and I'll
Mhm.
send you the link to it. But I'm interviewed because they were like, it was so funny. They introduced me, and it was we were cult of the dead cow. I was wearing my cult of the dead cow,
Okay.
not figuratively, but not literally, but figuratively. I'm part of the cult of the dead cow. I wasn't saying I was
Yeah.
part of L0pht. And it's like and Frontline is like they're like let's talk to these two elite hackers, and I always laugh. It's like, these two elite hackers, and it's like me and Reed, and these two guys, and we're talking about like back orifice, and
Yeah.
how back orifice was really, we released that to highlight the vulnerabilities built into Microsoft. And I went on a small rant. I do that as you can tell already from this conversation. And I went on this small rant because I was like, it's like, imagine the future when like, and remember this is like 1999 or whatever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, imagine the future when like everything is connected to the internet, and your refrigerator knows that you're out of milk, and so it communicates to your phone, which communicates to a watch that you're
Yeah.
wearing. And as you walk by a grocery store, the watch knows where you are, GPS, and then the watch goes, "Hey, there's milk on sale in that store. You should stop because the refrigerator is empty at home." And I said, imagine that level of interconnectivity. And if you don't build it right with the proper security, imagine the vulnerabilities you can be open to in terms of personal information
Yeah.
getting out there and getting your identity stolen, and what have you. And they cut out a bunch of my rant, but they left in enough of it and it was just so. I remember thinking like, I'm like, hell yeah, we saw that. It wasn't just, I mean, I said it, but everyone, like Reed's going like this, he's
Yeah.
nodding. And because back in the day, that's what we knew was going to happen.
Oh yeah.
We in our hearts, we're like, this is where it's going to go. The
Yeah.
Internet of Things, which there was no
And
term
we were
for.
doing it back then. We were just doing it in a hacker way. We were hacking things together. Like I remember
Yeah.
downloading a paper, and it was showing how to hack vending machines. So we set up a little server that connected to our soda machine, just like this was not our idea. We totally ripped this off from another person from their dorm, and we hooked it up so we could telnet to the soda machine to get the temperature of the Mountain Dew. So this way we knew, because we get so pissed off, we go down there by Mountain Dew and it's warm, and you're like, mother.
Nice.
So we
Nice.
did like, okay, nope, it's cold, it's not freshly restocked. Let's go get some Mountain Dew. And then of course
Yeah.
we had,
Yeah.
they did, what was that one? Was it Real Genius or whatever with Val Kilmer? Where they're doing like
Yes.
the ice shavings for the quarters and all that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
Yeah. He
doing the
uses
blue
dry ice.
boxing,
Yeah. And so
right?
there's no
So
record of his quarter going in. That's one of my favorite movies, of
yeah, so
course.
it's like that was really cool because I think that was one of the first movies where they really showed like some real legit hacks kind of taking place, and I always loved it when I see movies doing real stuff, but as common to where everyone kind of gets it. I mean, you get movies where it's just completely out of bounds and crazy when they show visuals for hackers, but
Yeah.
some of them are legit, and it's cool when they do it as real as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. 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 You're right. That was, yeah, I thought, yeah, God, Real Genius. I remember when I saw that. That was,
So one thing you're talking about with the Doom is I've always felt that id as a company was a huge proponent of the hacker subculture. Because I mean,
mm,
obviously, personally for me, because Wolfenstein is how I got into bulletin boards. And then when Doom came out, obviously, guess where I got it from, right? It's like you got the shareware version. And of course, we had the pirated version. And then I
yeah, yeah,
remember
yeah.
getting Doom 2, the pre-release. That was pirated before it even came out. Everyone had
That's
the Doom
right.
2
That's
beta
right.
builds as they were
Oh,
coming
that's
out, and the
right.
Quake betas. And then
That's
people were
right.
upgrading their hardware because you couldn't run the latest whatever id put out. It just wouldn't. You
That's
had to get a
right.
better graphics card and newer this and that, and so and
Yeah.
everyone's trying to figure out how to hack everything together to get the best computer to get. I mean, That's how I learned everything about my computer was to get it to run Doom. It was like
Yeah.
I want the best refresh rate. I'm talking to my friends, and we're like, wait,
Yeah.
we can deathmatch each other.
Yeah.
Hold on, we need to figure this
Yeah.
out. That's all we would focus
Yeah.
on, and then we'd be living until 3, 4 in the morning. My mom would be yelling at me like, "What are you doing? Go to bed."
Yeah. 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 That was, no, a lot of it was, there was a great deal of hacking that was, a lot of it's, I would always think of it as like there was like the hacking based on just curiosity. Like I went on I went down a rabbit hole one time because I was at the MIT flea market, back in the early L0pht days, and someone was selling a magnetic stripe card reader and writer,
Oh,
like a commercial, like for people who make cards, like not something you could just buy. It's like, oh, this is
right.
to read any magnetic stripe card and to write any data you want into the card. And I'm like, and it was
Yeah.
full, and all the documentation. I'm
And
like,
you already know
okay,
there's
I just
credit
need
card
to.
number generators out there. So it's like,
Well, no. So I was like, well, this is a good little story too. I was like, well, this is amazing, and then I realized I have no freaking idea what's the data format, like how is the data written exactly, what's the format, right? What's the,
yeah,
what kind of language is it written in, whatever, what are the, you could read the flux reversals, but you don't know what it means. Is it binary? Is it hexadecimal? What the hell's going on, right? What does it mean? What do these codes mean? And so anyway, I'm like, this is going to be the beginning of a journey, an adventure. So like it was like it was like buying a microscope. And then all of a sudden I'm able to look at the microscopic world. And so suddenly I was able to look at the world of magnetic stripe cards. And so I started just swiping every card, like, hey, Brian, give me your card. Give me your credit card. I just want to see what's on it, It's like, how does this work? What happens if you change this number? Does it still work? And he's like, don't fuck up my credit card.
yeah,
Like,
demagnetize it. Whoop.
yeah, what if I make your library card your credit card? I could do that. He's like, okay, that could be fun, and so you just started like discovering and then I started going to like libraries and trying to find manuals and all these different standards for like how data was written on different types of cards and all that stuff. And so I started doing all this research and reading stuff, and then I ended up, I'm like, I understand most of it, and I'm like, I've never been able to find all this information in one place before, so I'm going to write a text file and I'm going to call it magnetic. I called it Magnetic Stripe Orama, right? Like a day in the life of a flux reversal. It was so stupid humor, but anyway, nerd humor. So I wrote this long text file, and I had diagrams in there that were done in ASCII. It's like, here's what the
Of
card
course.
looks like, and I would use ASCII diagrams, because there were no embedded images. No one had
Yeah.
Word,
Yep.
It was all text files. And I'm like, this is it. This is like the like, if someone wants to understand how magnetic stripe cards work, read Count Zero's file on magnetic stripe-o-rama. I think I got Night Lightning to publish it in Frack magazine because it was long,
Oh,
and then I
Frack
think,
magazine. Holy
yeah,
shit, I haven't heard that in forever.
yeah, Night Lightning, yeah, we used to
Wow.
hang out, and he's a cool guy, and he's like, yeah, I'll put it in Frack for you. And I was like so happy. I'm like, oh, I've discovered all this stuff. And then I remember, like, I started getting, email and stuff from people who are like, wow, it was really cool. Thank you for writing that file. I learned so much. Learned so much. And then one day I got an email from someone who was like, yeah, this is really great. We're a little hacker group in Italy, and we want to make fake bank cards and steal pin numbers and I'm like, whoa. Okay. He's like, they're like, do you
Yeah.
want to work with us on this project? You can make some money. I'm like, I just not why I wrote this thing. I did not, but that was like my first exposure to the whole, like, knowledge can be dangerous. It's like,
Oh yeah.
it can be, even in the wrong hands. And the thing is, I think, to not, and this is the trick, is, in my opinion, is to not to restrict access to knowledge, but mitigate what you can do when you use the knowledge for bad purposes. It's the same way, like with fire. This is a good metaphor. Fire.
Mm-hmm.
If you've invented fire today, probably people would be like, oh, it's too hot, it's too dangerous, it catches other things. You need to reduce the maximum temperature of fire. You need to reduce the ability for it to spread, and people would nerf the feature set of fire to the point where it's just like a lukewarm piece of whatever. It'd be useless. So the smart thing to do is like, okay, fire can be really dangerous, but we're going to invent things like fire retardant fabrics and sprinkler systems, and we're going to invent this thing called the fire department. We're going to invent this thing called the fire extinguisher, right?
Yep.
You deal with what happens when it's used for ill purposes. And I feel the same way strongly about technology, the same way. You don't want to, and things like with crypto, right? Like, it's like, oh, crypto can be used by people for bad things. And I'm like, yeah, so can cash, which is what most of it's used for. But what you don't do is prevent the use of this technology. What you do is you go after the criminals who are using it for the wrong purposes. You go after the terrorists who are using Bitcoin.
Develop tools to help find it, like
exactly.
build more tech.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what we do. It's species, everything. We just, from the
Yeah.
beginning of time. But that's but a lot of yeah, so the hacking is, you have this part of it where it's curiosity in general, like me coming back full circle to that, magnetic stripe card thing. I was just curious, how do these things work? It's like discovering a microscope when I found this device. It's like I can look into this invisible world I never looked at, the world of magnetic stripes. And then the other thing too is like when you're a kid too, some of it it's just necessity. It's like I need to run Doom, so I need to get this thing working, and or like I need to call this bulletin board in London, and I'm a 15-year-old kid, and I need to figure out how to do it for
Yeah,
free. Because if I
exactly.
because if I call a toll call,
Yeah.
it's like your parents are gonna be like,
Yeah.
John, what the is this
You
$500
do that
phone
one
bill?
time.
And then you're cut off. It's like we're cutting off your access to, like, no, they're taking my modem away.
Yeah.
No. So you learn how to. That was it. I mean, that was the thing, right? People don't realize like the whole like because for a while it was really big, like calling cards and
Yeah.
out dazzling. Like people were figuring out how to make free phone calls simply because they wanted to talk to their friends for free,
They
not
wanted
because
more
they were trying to
information.
make money. Yeah,
Right.
they want to. I want to call my bulletin boards all around the world and not have to worry about how much is it costing me.
Yeah.
Because you're a 15-year-old
If
kid, you have
communication
nothing.
existed like it did now, people wouldn't be as concerned about trying to break the system because my view of like hacker like old school was always just there's technology out there. I want to understand what's going on and I want to know what I can do with it that maybe no one else has figured out yet. Like what else could I do
Yeah.
with this tech? Like if I take this piece and this piece, what could I make from that? And it was never malicious. It was never like, oh, I'm going to try to break in and steal stuff. It was just a matter of like
No.
like my mom worked for the post office. And one day we're in the post office and I heard a modem going off in the back and I'm like, "Oh." And I went back and I was like, Mom, you have the phone number written on the modem. Like, anyone can dial into this thing. And who knows? I'm like, what is this going to? And she's like, oh, don't worry. Our computer guy says it's totally fine. I was like, okay. So I went home, grabbed the number, and sure enough, I was in super fast. Like, the people were not protecting anything. And I had access to I could have done a lot of damage. But the whole point was, like, that wasn't the point. It was like, one, I just want to see if I could do it. And then two, I went to my mom, I'm like, look, I'm in. It was very simple, and look what I can do now. And she's like, oh, that's bad. I was like, yeah. So then she went back and they fixed it and put some stuff in place to fix it. And I
That's
think
awesome.
that's the whole point. Is it's just like we're just curious people, and if there's restrictions in our way and it's a technological restriction, to me that's not a restriction. We just haven't figured out how to get around it yet.
Exactly. Well said, my friend. Well said. And it's that little drive. Like it's like at the very very core of the hacker drive is just this like there's something stopping me. I'm gonna figure out how
Yeah.
to keep moving.
Yeah,
It's like I'm just gonna
don't
go
like
through
the
it,
worst thing you could do
around
is
it.
tell someone that it might be possible. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like I will dedicate the next year to figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't know if you can do that. It's like, well, I'm gonna okay.
Yeah. Or worse is like, no, that's totally impossible. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no way you can figure that out. Oh, okay. Well, challenge
So
accepted.
now our new worlds, like you mentioned, it was crypto as a new big thing that's obviously going on, and not just from the cryptocurrency realm, but from just the compute realm as well. And AI, I think those two are the biggest new technological changes that are happening to us.
Yeah.
Where do you see those? Let's take one at a time because those are two huge, vastly different topics. So, like let's take the crypto side. So, from a blockchain perspective, blockchain application development, and from a decentralized finance world, and just decentralized identity, because I'm a huge decentralized identity fan. I think it's definitely where we should be going. But where do you see kind of the crypto taking us in the next, let's just say 3 years? I think five. I don't think anyone can predict five.
Well, I think what's really happened is people are starting to realize that you can build a bunch of stuff on top of crypto and people will just it'll be plumbing. I think a
Mhm.
lot of the cryptocurrencies, digital assets. I think what we're going to start to see is a lot more people, a lot more of building where like crypto is the rails for
Yeah.
moving assets and money around, and also potentially the store value as different fiat types of currencies collapse. It's like, oh, we're going to park my money where it's going to stay, and no one's going to inflate it by printing it, whatever.
Yep. I don't know who's
So
doing
I
that.
think, yeah, yeah, and and lots of houses of cards are falling down or right on the edge of falling down right now. So I think what's going to happen though is a lot of you're going to see people building stuff on top of crypto where they're maybe like moving conventional fiat around because that's not going to go away anytime soon, no matter what
Right.
anyone would like to think. And crypto is the rails. I mean, like a good example of that is Strike, Jack Mallers. Jack
Mhm.
Mallers developing Strike as a way for people to do global remittance to send money from one country to another. Like I want to send US dollars and I want somebody to get, pesos in Mexico or whatever. And how do you do that? And he's built Strike where it's like, okay, what actually happens is your dollars are then converted into Bitcoin and we use the Lightning Network to send the Bitcoin to Mexico. And then in Mexico, it's converted from Bitcoin to pesos.
Yeah.
Voila. And you can
We get
charge a
around all
fraction.
that crazy crap.
None of this stupid, like, not, you don't have to deal with the conventional banking system to move the money
Right.
around. And so I think we're
And
going to see a
there's
lot more of that
right back
in
to your
particular.
the hacker mentality, which is this is not efficient. There's a better, faster, way easier way to do this, and it's less costly. Why aren't we doing this? Let's figure out a way to move it and hack this together to make it work.
Yeah, exactly. Let's think, maybe the easiest way to move money around is to not move the money around, or when I say money, I mean
Right.
fiat. Maybe
Like
the easiest way to move
changing the
the way to move
currency.
the fiat, it's a very Zen thing too. Like the way to move the fiat around most efficiently is to not move the fiat around.
Yeah.
You just convert it
It's
to Bitcoin or whatever asset you want, digital asset, send it over there and then convert it back.
yep.
And I think we're gonna see a lot more of that like kind of like really out of the box thinking, and especially around decentralized finance too, where you're basically talking about programmable money. It's like, okay,
Right.
let's like make money with, and let's especially let's DeFi is all about what disintermediation, removing the middleman, because
Right.
there's just so
For no
many
need.
middlemen for everything, and you add decentralization. The average person, you say decentralized, and they're like, I don't give a shit. What does that mean? Who cares? I
Yeah.
just want to do this thing. They do understand. They do understand the concept of disintermediation because everyone understands what middlemen are, and
Yep.
it's never a good thing. It's
Right.
like,
It's like more
they
money,
take
more
a cut,
time.
another barrier, and people are like, there's so many middlemen, or just like this, they're like these like leeches on the system. They're rent-seeking behavior is what they call it in game theory. It's like rent. It's just they're looking to suck value out in the middle and not actually add any value to the network. And so I think like with DeFi, we're just going to see more opportunities for optimizing things that have gotten way out of kilter. Where there's like so many leeches that it's just unbelievable. And I think also, I think digital identity, I think self-sovereign identity, decentralized, disintermediated identity, where people are in control of their own information. Um, there's so much potential there, in terms of, and also solving problems like, identity theft and all that.
Large
The big
corporate breaches.
challenge, or what?
Large corporate breaches. Like, oh, we just lost 4 million people's
Oh yeah,
passwords and SSNs. Oops.
yeah.
Here's
Well, the
LifeLock for a
only
year.
yeah, exactly. So let's make a business. Let's treat, what is it? In healthcare, we'd always say, don't a lot of times people just treat the symptoms, but not the disease.
Right.
That's what LifeLock is treating
Yeah.
the symptoms. The
Yeah.
underlying disease is the fact that there's all this centralized information about you out there.
Right.
That's it. LifeLock
Yep.
is a cool product, but it's freaking treating the symptom, not the disease. So I think people are starting to wake up. It's like, oh God, every other day I open my email. It's like, yeah, you're one of 2 million people who just had
Yeah.
their data
Or
stolen.
don't worry, you're safe. Everyone else is messed up. It's like either way, it's
Yeah,
like, what?
yeah,
I don't trust you
yeah.
anymore.
It's like, what? So I think the only challenge with that I see is that people have just gotten so used to being powerless that they've
Yeah.
almost given up, in my experience. Like so many people I know,
Yes.
like people would just be like, "Oh, my identity's out there. It's
Well,
another
what am
fucking
I gonna do
Monday.
about it?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's another Monday. There we go. Okay, I guess I'll just wait to see if someone opens up a new mortgage with my name on some or whatever.
Yeah.
It's people are just sort of used to.
They've been
It's
boiled
sad.
slowly in the pot.
yeah, it's the frog boiling thing. It's the learned helplessness. It's the, well, it's always sucked like that. I can't
Yeah.
imagine it ever being better. I can't imagine myself being more in control because every day something more out of control happens, you know?
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny to say because like also one big to me a big paradigm of the hacker subculture growing up was a lot of it was about privacy, anonymity, and maintaining like rights and being like you remember there was like the hacker manifesto that kind of kicked
Oh
off that
God,
whole
yeah, you're
chain of
right.
things, right? Like we all had
Yeah.
manifestos and it was all about like we're and like you brought up before like it was like very anarchistic, right? The anarchy movement I think was also tied to that subculture in the sense where it was like I don't play by your rules, I live in a different world that you don't understand, and there's very different rules here, and I don't trust you because you're doing it
Yeah.
wrong. I'm gonna do it my way. Like I'm smarter than you.
Yeah. 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 And none of it coming. I mean, you're always gonna have bad actors.
Of course.
You know, there's always people who are gonna like, oh, I'm gonna use this power to do something bad. And it's like it exists everywhere.
Yeah.
But the
Go after the bad
overall,
people.
yeah, go after the bad people. But I just, once I became part of that whole subculture, like I never turned back. I'm like, this is my tribe. These are my
Right.
people. This is like
Yeah.
the value set for life that I'm just gonna be part of forever, no
Hmm.
matter what I do, no matter what field I work in.
Yep.
And it's
Absolutely.
just it's a so I wouldn't call it an anarchy. I mean, that's part of it, right? But it's more of just like, you know, mutual respect. You could say this like libertarian overtones to it. It's like we don't want governments. We think we can figure this shit out on our own better. Over-regulation is just generally a bad thing. It leads to authoritarian pockets that just keep
Yep.
growing. And um, but at the end of the day, though, it's uh yeah, it's something that once it gets into your blood, it's kind of you're like, let's say it's part of your DNA. Like, you're
Mhm.
always a hack. I mean, even to like, I deliberately wore my flipper, my flipper
I
shirt
saw
here.
that.
Yeah, because I was one of the first Kickstarter. I
Oh,
was one of the
really?
early
Oh,
funders.
that's
Yeah, I got a
awesome.
black one. I got a black flipper. I got one of the
Oh,
elite
shit.
black ones. Yeah, and
That's
it's
rad.
like I show this to people like, what is that little thing you're fooling around with? I'm like, oh, it's like a Swiss Army knife, but for radio frequencies. It's a transceiver. I can transmit and receive and listen in on all these frequencies and see what's going on. And they're like, why? Why
Why
would you
not?
want it? And I tell them it's like a microscope. It's like a microscope. It's this thing I can see a world that we live in every day, and I can play and I can learn how things work. And not for it's not for committing crimes. It's just for understanding how
That's
things work, and
yep.
sometimes in a comical way, understanding how poorly they're set up. Like my favorite thing to do is like, well, what can you actually do with it? I'm like, oh, let's find a Tesla. There's a Tesla. And I open up the charging port.
Yeah.
It's like, and they're like, how do you do that? And I'm like, well, then I have to explain how charging stations work and how they all use the same frequency to tell the Tesla to open up the thing. And it's like, yeah. And they're like, isn't that kind of a security flaw? I'm like, well, if you don't want someone sticking something randomly into your Tesla's charging point,
Yeah.
probably is.
Yeah. It's
Probably
probably not a
is.
good idea.
And they're like, shouldn't they fix that? I'm like, yeah, they probably should. And the answer is like, well, they just don't. A lot of times, companies just don't care. They're like, well, whatever. It's the
Yeah.
liability. They do the math. They do the cost of fixing this problem versus
Yep.
their liability if they don't fix it. And if this is bigger than this, then they do this,
Yep.
which is they
And
don't
if it's
fix
not
it.
public enough, they're like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah,
If it
yeah.
gets
And
written up in the
so,
news, all of a sudden there's a recall.
yeah, exactly, exactly. They're gonna be like, oh, we got to fix this random. Anyone can open a charging point on a Tesla if they know how to do it, but it's not. It's the
What would you
same
say are
code we're
your
solving.
favorite like little hacker devices you have, like Flipper, that you kind of play with?
My flipper is a favorite one. Like I love the flipper because it does everything. It's like I can play
Yeah.
around with RFID cards, NFC cards. Um, I can yeah, anything to do with industrial control systems, all the RF frequencies that they use. It's like, yeah, I can use it. I love the fact that it's all open source.
Yeah.
And when you buy the flipper, it comes with firmware that locks you out of sending signals on the ones the FCC don't want you to send signals on.
Yeah.
And then, of course, since it's open source, you can just download some different firmware that's like,
Weird.
I don't give a f. You can just do
Yeah.
whatever you want. You know,
Yep.
just don't do bad things, but we'll let you read and write or read and send whatever frequencies you want. Just don't be an idiot, you know? And so I love that it's all built on open source, you know, where it's as a company, they have to abide by the different, you know, depending on where you buy your flipper from, they lock out different bands of the frequency spectrum based on whatever, you know. Germany has these, you know,
Yeah.
you're not supposed to use, and the US says you're not supposed to use these, and Canada says you're not supposed to use these. But I love the hacker culture where like the first thing that came out as soon as the flipper came out was like, yeah, that we made some custom firmware and we took out that code because the hardware supports doing anything, you know.
But has anyone gotten Doom to run on it yet?
Yes, I can run
Okay.
Doom on my flipper. Wait a minute. I don't know if it's charged. Wait a second. I'll be right back. I'm going downstairs. Where the hell is it?
That,
I hope I left
for
it
those
charged.
that don't understand, every time any new tech comes out, it's like Hacker 101 that the first thing you have to do, and the first person to do it, is to get Doom running on that thing. Like, that's just more of that whole through line of id, like Doom being like tied so tightly with hacker culture the whole time.
Yeah.
I remember putting Doom on my little iPod. I had Doom running on my Razr phone back in the day. It's like, oh, gotta
There
get
it is.
Doom to run
Here we
on
go.
everything. Oh,
I have multiple versions of the flipper. This is the cool clear one because it's like
Ooh,
very
fancy.
retro. My black one's in the other room. It's not charged, but you can see here. I don't know if you can see. I got Doom.
Oh, yeah.
Doom, but let me run it.
Oh,
Doom.
shit. That's awesome.
Doom. It's got the.
There you,
Can you hear? Press fire. I'm in Doom. I'm in Doom. I'm doing it.
that is perfect.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
that's so awesome. Yeah, Doom is
This was
such an
totally
amazing game.
unscripted. I didn't realize you were a big Doom fan. I
Oh,
already
Die
had it
Hard.
installed on here, of course, on
Yeah.
my flipper.
Now, well, you know what? Now I gotta find mine, which I think is over here somewhere, and I gotta install it. I'm gonna have to install it on mine now for sure. I think it's.
Yeah,
I don't know what the hell I
yeah.
did with it. It's sitting here somewhere.
But I
I have
love
like a
this.
drawers of random devices and crap that I keep playing with. I'm like, I'll get to it later.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the flipper. I love the culture around the flipper community. What's another little gadget I like? Oh, I love the is she charged? Yeah, the little uh the Chameleon Ultra, which is like
What is
this
that?
super tiny thing for emulating different NFC type cards and
Oh,
reading them and
oh
copying them
wow,
and playing with
that's
them.
cool.
Yeah, it's like one of the most elegantly designed pieces of
Super
tech.
tiny.
It's just like, yeah, and it's all just epoxy. And it's like I can eat
Nice.
it, you know, I can swallow it in a pinch. Like I don't have
That's pretty cool
anything.
too.
It's gone. It's kind of big, but I love just the elegance the way it's designed. And this is another open source, you know, project that people are working on. The Chameleon Ultra.
That's
But
awesome.
those are my two favorite little um,
Gadgets.
tech things at the
Cool.
moment.
So, so one of the big things I would say for me, what put L0pht on kind of like on the spotlight for me, like, well, obviously like the 2600 articles and just the subculture and hearing about L0pht Heavy Industries is everyone just knew that you guys were the epitome of these guys are what everyone else wants to emulate. Like everyone wants to be L0pht essentially. But when you guys came out with L0pht Crack and Back Orifice, that was just everyone lost their shit because like holy crap, like there goes Windows NT. It's like
Yeah.
it was so big, and that tool just flew around every PBS underground so fast
Yeah.
because it worked. It was so flawlessly simple,
Yeah.
and it was a massive tool. Were,
Yeah.
did you have anything to do with any like the tools that were being developed out of L0pht, or were you more staying on like the hardware hacking side of things?
I was more on the hardware hacking side, and I would say like the social hacking side of things. Like I was
Okay.
always the one who was like getting the people together
Yeah.
and you know I was always big on the social. I was big on the social engineering side of things. Like how do we,
Hmm.
you know, maybe we can hack society to do this thing or whatever, you know. And you know, I was not involved in the, you know, the actual coding of things, but kind of like a classic product guy. I'm like, maybe it should do this, maybe it should do
Yeah.
that, you know, thinking of features. That was the other thing That's right. That was the other thing that I would say that was beautiful about the loft, that I realized what a real hacker space should be about, is that we got multidisciplinary people in there. We
Yeah.
got people with very, very different skill sets, right? We had people who were like brilliant at freaking writing assembly. You know, we got people who were like really good at, we had some people who were like good at cracking games, and they were just good
Yeah.
crackers of software security, you know, of anti-copying. So don't copy that floppy. And then we had people who were like really good at hardware, like making hardware, like soldering together. And then we had people who were, I remember one guy, you know, Tom Icom is his handle. I won't say his real name, but you'll know him from the back in the day. He was all about radio stuff. I learned so much
Mm.
from Tom about radio. Just like he you know, I learned how to, you know, do so many things from him, and that, because that was his thing, right?
Yeah.
And so when you get interdisciplinary people together, you get an opportunity for creating new projects that you could never do just by yourself, because you need an interdisciplinary team. And I remember at the
Yep.
time thinking, this reminds me a lot of how medical research works, right? Ideally, you want to collaborate with people who have different areas of expertise but are overlapping enough so that they can communicate with each other. And for
Yeah.
me, the magic was in getting people to connect with each other who had overlapping skill sets. So I was always doing things like, hey, you should talk to this person. You should talk, you want to do this thing, you should talk to that one. I was always connecting people.
You're
I
like the
was like,
project manager.
yeah, and well, like, yeah, and like but like a Malcolm Gladwell connector person, like his
Yeah.
Malcolm Gladwell's concept of like, I was a connect, I've always been a connector like that. And I just remember seeing such a, like, I would connect some people together, just introduce them, and then they would just go out. I'm like, oh my God, look what you made. That's amazing, you know. And also recognizing um, what was really important to me too was making sure people who um, I felt were like amazing wouldn't get lost in the dark corners, you know, or we make sure they have opportunities to keep learning. That was really important to me. Part of the
Yeah.
kind of the cultivating thing. And I remember, I wonder if you'll ever see this, but like, we had this young girl. Her handle was Lady Ada, right? She, she's Adafruit, the hardware. You know, she basically turned into this huge success. She started her own company.
I have a
She
bunch
like,
of her stuff in my drawer right here.
yeah, Ada, yeah, Lenore, right? So anyway, we met her. I met her the first time. She was like this young little teenage girl, and she's so smart, and wanting to work on all this stuff. And I remember like, hey, come over to the loft. Here's a bunch of stuff you can use. You can meet other people, and she was just like a sponge. She was so awesome. And you know, of course, in the hacker culture back then, you know, it's like, oh my God, is that a girl? You know,
Yeah.
what the hell is she
The
doing here?
one.
She was like the one. It's like, what's this? And so so I was very protective of her. I was like, just don't around with this one, okay? Just, or any of them, but don't this. Yes,
Yeah.
she's a girl. She's smarter than you, so just leave her the alone, or work with her even better, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we would have fun with her. It's like, hey, Lady Ada, can you fit inside the PDP 1134? You're small. Can you get in there? You know, we kind of tease her sometimes because she was very small at the time. But I love, you know, so you know, I wanted to make sure that she had an environment where she could just kind of grow and learn and be connected with the right people, you know, because there are always some
And
jerks.
now look where she is.
And now look where she is. Yeah, she's on the cover of. I remember seeing her on the cover of Wire, and I was like, oh my God, that's so freaking awesome. And
Yeah.
I think the last time I ran into her was at Hackers on Planet Earth, the Hope conference in New York, one of the past ones, hosted by 2600 magazine. And I remember seeing her, and I was like, oh, man, I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited to see you. And she was like, oh, Count Zero, thank you. You know, it was had such a great time at the loft in the early days, and that's for me what it was all about. For me, the whole thing about the loft was helping people like her just like go off. You know,
Everyone did that. That was in Loft. I feel like. I mean, it was just.
everyone did. It was a cultural thing. It was,
Yeah.
and that's the nice thing. Like when you start, the nice thing is when you start something, like me and Brian Oblivion, when you start something, you get to set the template of the culture.
Yeah.
You're like, this is what it's going to be about, and then you kind of eventually over time it can drift, but like you have a lot of control over like these are the values, that we believe in, and this is what we're going to do. And so then, like, as you get more people into the club or whatever, you only let people who have the same values, and then those people reinforce those values because they're all, you see what I mean? Like the culture
Yeah.
maintains a steady state, at least in a short term and medium term, maybe long term. But you have, so then it just is this positive, and it was always from the very beginning this very positive culture that for me was number one. I was like, this is not about like, let's set up a place where we can do crimes, or let's just get high, or just
Yeah.
drunk or whatever. It was like, no, this is going to be like
It's a research
learning
lab.
space, positive space, and it was really happy to, I was really happy to see it, stay like that and then evolve over time to, a company that's doing good things, helping people. It's not like L0pht evolved
Yeah.
into this giant criminal syndicate,
Yeah.
that it's like,
Whoops.
but it never could have. See, that's the thing. It never could have, because the culture was set from the beginning. The most positive hacker values, the real philosophy, the ethics behind it. And
Did
it
you ever
sounds,
face any legal threats? Not like you particularly, but like L0pht. Like, did you ever get? Because I know, obviously, there's the whole L0pht went and testified in front of Congress. You could bring the internet
yeah.
down in 30 minutes by just standing up Doom servers everywhere. But did you ever have like any actual where government agencies were a little bit more inquisitive about you than you felt comfortable about?
I maybe in the later days after I split off, after they started getting more commercial. In the early days, no, because it was like you'd go to like DEF CON back when it was just held at the Alexis Park Motel.
Yep.
Back in
Sorry, my
California.
first one was Riviera, so I'm not. I wasn't that far
Yeah,
back. So.
it was back in the Alexis Park. We used to drive the golf carts into the pool at night when we got drunk. And that
When's
happened.
the last time you went to DEF CON?
Oh my God, like 15 years ago, I swear. It's been
Okay.
forever.
Yeah, so
It's
then
been
you
forever.
definitely exited when it was awesome. Because I feel I
Yeah, I
just
mean
went
that,
recently and it's
well,
not the
it's
same.
company. It's a corporate thing. I was back then. It was like, hey, we're doing this. It was all like people knew, just doing something for fun. And the big thing for me at the time too was because you had law. I was in L0pht,
Hmm.
but I was also in Cult of the Dead Cow. And Cult of the Dead Cow, we were all about performance art, right? We were like,
Yeah,
we're gonna go up on stage, and Swamp Rat's gonna rap to you while wearing his chaps and his cowboy hat and his speaking spell that he's rapping with. And it's like, so it was like a spectacle. We would wear costumes, we would dance on stage. One time at Hackers on Planet Earth, we actually were on stage with Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, who
oh
the guy who
wow,
founded the Dead
really?
Kennedys. Yeah, yeah, we were
Dude,
on
that's
we did a
fucking
stage
rad.
show with Jello Biafra, like, because we were like, yeah, let's just get up there and sing and dance and talk about privacy and hacking.
What kind of music did you listen to, like kind of back in the day, like when you were sitting there hacking away? What did you kind of have jamming on in the background?
Oh
Were you
God, a
like
lot of
into punk
front
and stuff
front
like that, or
242. I was into
okay?
front 242, and a lot of punk, well, a lot of punk rock. Yeah, a lot of like, I always was a big fan of the Dead Kennedys. I mean, the lyrics of the songs are poetry. And but yeah, a lot of like, speed metal. A lot of when like when the movie Hackers came out, that whole soundtrack. The soundtrack to Wipeout, that was always playing.
Oh, that's that. Well, that was in Hacker. I think Hackers was a great movie, personally.
Yeah,
It was. It
yeah.
doesn't show like real hacking. It's definitely very dramatized, but I feel like it really captures the culture really well
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah, and I would say like, you want to know what music we were listening to, like just the soundtrack to Hackers, like that was it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
nailed it. They nailed the soundtrack. But in
Yep.
particular like the like Wipeout, music from Wipeout. And it's funny because I can't remember when they released because that was the first
Wipeout's
time
in the game
Wipeout
in the movie.
in the movie. Yeah, they're
Like they're
playing
playing it.
Wipeout.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But like the music, like the soundtrack to Wipeout, I
I think
can't
it's after the
remember.
PS1 because like
Yeah,
that's when
yeah.
it was really hit home.
But it's interesting because they actually have now like released a remastered version of the entire Wipeout soundtrack, and of course I bought it, and like I listen to it in the background sometimes. It's just like this, but that was always the music playing in the background, probably for all hackers.
Yeah.
It was a lot
Yep.
of.
So do you think Zero Cool was ripoff of you?
I don't know. I don't know. I honestly
I
don't
mean, they're
know.
hacking the Gibson. Zero cool. They had like a loft where they had all their hacker stuff at.
You know what Lady Ada used to do? She always used to give me shit. She always used to give me shit because she was like, because at the time I had the long hair, and she said, "You're like Mister the Plague. You're like the
Oh, the
bad guy,
plague.
Zero." Because everyone called me
Yeah,
Zero. It's like Zero. You're like the
yeah.
because at the time we were like, yeah, what character in the movie do you think? And Lady Ada's like, yeah, Zero. You're Mister the Plague. And I'm like, why? It's because of the hair. That's it. You got the long hair.
The
You get
hair.
the
That's
same.
all it
Yeah,
took.
the beard. You know, you're like, I'm like, but I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy. It's like you're Mister the Plague, and because I was remember he was like, I'm the Plague, and then he'd always be Mister the
Yeah,
Plague to you,
exactly.
you know.
He's got a
And I feel like
skateboard.
yeah, I feel like I need to rewatch that movie now again,
It's so good.
maybe yeah, Zero cool. I don't know, or yeah, Count Zero. I always liked the handle too because it was like easy. People just call me Zero, and then I could just write the number zero, and that's me, you know, Zero.
Is that why you
You know,
threw a
and have
zero in loft? Or are you just doing leet speak?
that was doing elite speak. Loft
Okay.
was totally. It's a loft,
Yeah.
and how do you spell loft in elite speak? It's L
Zero PH.
zero PHT.
Yeah.
And then you add a buzzsaw logo with an electrical cord coming out of the back end of it,
Make
and
it
it's like
hardcore.
it's totally elite and hacking, like
Yes.
ripping through things, you know, tearing through
So
firewalls. And
one of my favorite interviews, I think I read it somewhere. So obviously I'm going back, so it's hard to remember where I got all this info was. But I think it was the Voyager satellite that was approaching Mars, and it was like a big to do. And someone was like, "Oh, where were you?" It's like, "Oh, I was just up on the roof." It's like, "Why?" It's like, "Oh, I was fixing the satellite because we're capturing the data coming back from the satellite
nice.
because we want to see what it's saying, in real time." And I was just like, what? Like here I am sitting there trying to like crack into machines or test out different networks and play around with this stuff, and then here I am reading people about intercepting satellite transmissions from Mars, and I'm just like, I'm not even close. Like it was like I didn't even think that's a thing to even do, let alone
Yeah.
accomplish it. And it was just like, oh, it's Thursday. That's just what we've been working on. We're noodling around.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, that's also the beauty of like in the hacker culture having this interdisciplinary collaboration,
Yeah,
right? Because like somebody who's like an expert in satellite stuff, that's like a very specialized area. Like you got
oh
to go
yeah,
deep into that area, and like finding something like that, and then like, oh, and I'm going to collaborate with someone who's really good at writing code, and another person who's really good at doing front end UI stuff, and then all
hmm,
of a sudden all this magic happens, and it's like, oh wow, we can do this. We got the hardware, we've got the software, we've got the firmware, we've got the everything, the whole stack,
yeah. I
everything.
feel like Loft was probably like the first. I don't want to say like startup, but it was one of those things where you just had a whole bunch of extremely smart people and various focuses all across a spectrum of tech
Yes,
and unrestricted collaboration. Like it was just
yes,
every idea was welcome,
that's it.
and nothing was off limits. And it was, hey, how can we push things farther and how can we work together to build really cool stuff? And
Yes,
then let's share it. And that was like,
yes,
and that set the standard not just for Loft but for everyone. I mean, that it impacted me, it impacted my life. It's like
that's
I
awesome.
adopted that mentality, and I know my
That's
friends
awesome.
did, and a lot of other people did. And
That
it's like, so I was like, when I was trying to explain to my wife, I'm like, you don't understand. Like, Loft to me in the hacker world is like in the music world it would be Slayer, or in the computer like video game world is Doom. It's like
yeah,
it was a group that just was leaps and bounds above everyone that really set an entire
yeah.
world that has just taken off from there.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, at the time we didn't know that was
You're
going
just
on.
like, hey,
We,
you
we,
want to
we were,
meet up and do cool stuff?
yeah, we didn't know at the time. It was like we knew we wanted to have a legacy. I knew that I had a certain ethos, as it's obvious. Like I'm like, this is what it's about, right? And this is
Yeah,
the template for the culture. But it just, and it's not. And also the thing to remember too is it wasn't just who was in the loft. Like you go to Wikipedia, like who was in the loft.
yeah,
That's incidental. What was really important was the community around it because it
yeah,
would because not everyone could be part of the loft because you could only be part of the loft if you helped pay the rent. That was it. It's like, oh, you want to be part of the loft? I want a desk here. How do you get a desk? I got to pay part of the rent. There you go. You're done.
yeah,
And then over time, there was more criteria for like you wouldn't let in anyone, but you'd have to
yeah.
kind of make sure there was a good cultural fit because sometimes people are just like whatever, but
Weird.
that's
Yeah,
fine. but like it was like picking roommates, right? It's like figuring out a
Yeah.
roommate situation. And because there were some people who were brilliant. It's like, dude, you're never gonna have any money to pay the rent. I'm sorry, can't we can't subsidize you, whatever. But
Did you ever have to
it
kick
was,
anyone out?
oh, I can't remember. I don't remember.
That's
It
good.
was
Most likely it
I
wasn't
mean, but
bad.
the thing was, the bottom line was it attracted just good people. 99.99% of the time, it was just like really good people. So you had all these people who
Yeah.
were not part of the loft, but who, for all intents and purposes, were, because they were
Yep.
hanging out all the time. They were coming over all the time. Sometimes they even had access to the space, even if they weren't part of the loft. It got much more formalized when it became a real company, right, and all that
Hmm.
stuff. And again, that was
Yeah.
past my time. But so people like Lady Ada, like she wasn't technically part of the loft, but oh my, I consider her totally part of the loft scene. That was it.
Yeah.
She was like part of the community there, a critical person. A critical person. So many people learned from her over time. I remember people be going like, yeah, oh my God, I learned all this stuff from her. So this little teenage girl. I mean, she's a grown woman now, but at the time, it was
That
just like
was, you know what?
mind blowing.
That was the beauty, though, of the internet and the hacker culture back then, because with BBSs, I guess I should really say, is because like I was a 14-year-old kid when I first got into it, and that's what opened up my eyes, and that's 100% as to why I'm here right now doing what I do, for sure, in the security space. But when you're in that like BBS world and talking with people, it is completely anonymous, and there's no boundary. It's not like, oh, I'm a 14-year-old kid talking to some 30-year-old guy. It didn't matter. And it wasn't even a question. It wasn't like, oh, are you just some kid? I mean, you know, like a script kiddies and whatever. But like, it it didn't matter. It was, are you worth your weight in salt? If so, that's all that matters. It's like, cool. What'd you
Yeah,
do? What can you help with? And
yeah,
awesome, great to have you.
yeah. And as long as you're as long as you're smart and curious and collaborative and
Yeah,
not an asshole, then it's like that's it. That's it. You're in.
you
You
definitely had
know?
to work your way. You had to prove that though. A lot of the times,
Well,
it was a
yeah,
lot of.
yeah.
So it wasn't terribly easy all the time.
No, no. And sometimes it was just, it was just, um, yeah. Sometimes, I mean, it was often just like a gut feeling too, and it's like you never, but it was, there was this whole, it was always the joke like elite
Yeah. Oh
access,
yeah.
elite.
Elite
How do you become
access.
elite? EL1T3, elite, spelled in elite speak, right? And and we would always joke about it too. Like, I mean, I remember like with the Cult of the Dead Cow, we would always be like, if we would go to conferences, we'd all stay in the same hotel room because we had no money, right?
Yeah, of
Whatever.
course.
And we'd be like, yeah, let's just all crash in the room. And so we'd always like rent a big room, sometimes like a suite. And so the big joke was we would always say, we're going back to the suite of the elite. The suite of the elite. That was like the thing. That's where the CDC people were hanging out. The suite of the elite.
How did Cult of Dead Cow start out? Like, because that's a whole nother group that was massively huge in the
Well,
BBS
yeah,
days
that was
too.
way before Loft. I mean, that's all. That's all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Swamp Rat, and the story of that.
Wow.
I, I wasn't part of it from the early days. I wasn't there at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
I came in later, but it was basically just a bunch of people who were Swamp Rat. Again, he was the cultural touchstone. He had this idea of like the kind of creative, wacky people he wanted to be around, and then just kept accepting those types of people into the group who would then accept more people like that into the group. So the Cult of
Yeah.
the Cow was, I would call it, like this sort of crazy in particular creative, because there's a lot of crazy writing that came out, like a lot of
Yeah. There's
like
always
just
text
short
files.
story. Always
Yeah.
these weird ones too. It's like,
Yeah.
what is this one? Sex with Satan? What the hell is this short story about? It's like,
Well, that's what
what's
garnered the
that?
attention. You know, is just
Yeah, it was
everyone's
like
like,
shock
every time
value.
you see
Yeah,
a paper, you're like, oh, you got
yeah,
to
this
have
is
all
gonna
that
be
CDC
weird.
stuff.
It's like strap
Exactly.
here. What is this? A CDC text file? Let me strap in here because it's gonna get weird real fast. Here we go. And that was the joy of it. It was just like this weird, and and so he attracted these very eclectic, creative, weird people, and the whole like computer hacking thing was like incidental to that too. It was like it was not about
Yeah.
being a hacker. It was about being a weird, creative person with a
It
certain
was more
type of
cultural.
yeah, and so he just set that cultural template, and over time, it just kind of got more people into it, and it stayed like this amazing group of people who were just creative, eclectic, interdisciplinary again in their creativity,
Yep.
and some people were really good writers, some people were musicians, and it just and it was all about these releasing these text files, and then there was this intersection of the CDC and the L0pht. Like for me, example, it was like having credentials, like I am Count Zero, CDC, comma L0pht. It's like MD, PhD, L0pht, CDC, and but it's interesting because now that you're saying it, it's like the evolution of these different very specific types of culture
Mhm.
empowered and enabled by technology. You couldn't have a group like the Cult of the Cow form without bulletin boards. You couldn't have the L0pht
No.
form without the internet and the web and
Flea
and
markets.
and flea markets. Yeah, it's just this really interesting evolution of culture, and then how the culture propagates. Like the culture goes beyond L0pht and beyond Cult of the Dead Cow, and it inspires, and affects young kids and people like you, and you're saying I'm in this field because of this. It kind of tweaked my brain. It's like now you're part of it. You're part of it. You're part of the L0pht. You're part of the CDC. You really are. It's this amazing, beautiful effect of cultural evolution and expansion.
Yeah.
And and there's something viral. It has to be something viral about it too. And there's something viral about the hacker culture. There's something viral about it. Just does
Yeah.
spread. I mean,
It just gives
case
you
in point.
adrenaline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and case in point, this thing here, it's like that's totally hacker culture. I'm like,
100%.
except now it's happening not in the L0pht, it's happening in Discord.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like they're hanging out in Discord, and they're the engine of the engine driving this is like Kickstarter. It's like and
Yeah.
fun, crowdsourcing and things like that, and GitHub, that's stuff like that, that didn't exist way back in the day.
Yep.
Shared code repositories. Holy cow, what an idea, what a concept. um
Well, yeah, and then who was it? One of the Loft guys went off and built was it Vericent? What was the
yeah,
company?
yeah.
What is that? What it was?
Veracode.
Vericode. There you go. Thank you.
Veracode, Weld
And
Pond, and yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
all
So like all
about
these.
scanning the GitHub repos, finding those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was it's just that kind of continual growth of
Yeah.
like the culture kind of affecting things. For me, at the end of the day, it's it's just I feel very grateful to have been part of something that this still has echoes today and has touched people's
Oh, I
lives,
think it's
and
forever.
having a net positive effect on
Yeah,
the world. I think that
absolutely. I
was.
think Loft Heavy Industries will be forever known as the hacker supergroup that started it all, and it's the foundation of where everything came from, in my opinion. And I feel like I have a good enough history in working in it to see how everything's kind of grown along. And from being an
Yeah.
outsider of Loft and watching that grow and just kind of being like, "Gee, just what are they going to do
But
next?" It's like, and it
yeah,
just
but you
inspires
see, you're not an
someone else,
outsider. See,
other people to do
that's the
stuff.
thing, though. That's the thing, Adam. It's like, mm, it's like from my perspective, I always laugh when people are like, "Well, I was an," when they say like, "I was just an outsider. You guys are doing this," and I'm thinking, "No, you were part of it. You were.
All right, I'm gonna
you're
make myself a Loft shirt. I'm gonna start wearing
you're
it. I
part
have
of it." No,
permission
it's
from you.
it's see for me. See, that's the thing. Because remember, my perspective, like L0pht Heavy Industries. Yes, the company had specific people doing specific roles, and it's on a
Yeah,
employee list and all that stuff, and a membership, and the L0pht people who were actually renting space. They were a specific group of people, and all this.
yeah,
But the real L0pht was like everyone in that orbit. It was,
yeah,
it's like all of the people who were in that space talking with people. It's like, oh, people who were two people who would have never collaborated because they would have never met each other other than because they met because of something that happened at the L0pht, or they both read something or a software. Hey, did you see the L0pht crack? Yeah, I saw the L0pht crack. Let me work on this with you. Okay, cool. They're part of it. It's
yeah.
just this it's much bigger. I guess the point I'm trying to make is it's so much bigger than the roster. It's so much bigger, and that's how I see it, because I see it from a cultural perspective, from the ripples,
Yeah, and that's
and
absolutely
that
happening.
continue to happen. It's
That's
just
amazing. So, what are you doing now?
oh well, yeah, I went down the crypto rabbit hole,
Yeah.
back in the Bitcoin days. It's like, what's this thing I can mine on a CPU? What the fuck's this all about? I got into, it's interesting. I've done a lot of different things too. I've done a lot of educational software. I was really big into immersive learning environments. I worked at um, Linden Lab. We invented ostensibly the first metaverse, visual metaverse at least, Second Life. I was part of that when that was
Oh
built,
wow.
and my focus was always on how can you use immersive worlds like Second Life for education and learning. And I actually even did some projects in Second Life where we brought together patients who were, because I was still at Mass General in the early days when I was working with them, um, people who were isolated in their homes, like because of,
Yeah.
of mobility issues or things like multiple sclerosis, whatever.
Mm.
It's like you're isolated physically or geographically. You want to connect with other people, and we would have people, log into Second Life and meet each other and use voice talking and have
Mm.
environments where they could build things and so forth. But then I got, and so I've always been interested in it's kind of like the loft, right? It's like bringing people together and decentralized things, and the people decide, and
Yeah.
self sovereignty, and all that. And so when Bitcoin popped onto my radar, um, uh, I was fascinated in it, not from a financial perspective, not because like how can I make some money with this, because I wasn't really interested in finance at all.
Yeah.
I was like, what? This is really interesting. Something where, okay, let me look into it. And then that started my journey of like trying to understand the conventional financial system. It's like, okay, to understand the problem that Bitcoin's solving, I need to understand the problem. What's
Right.
wrong with the financial
Right.
system? And then I went down that rabbit hole, and I had no idea how up it was. I was like, are you kidding me? Is that how Swift works? Is that
Yeah.
how global remittance works? Is that what inflation is really caused by? Like I'm like listening to recordings like Milton Friedman, and I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea how up this shit was. It's like, oh my God, money printing, they really do. What is quantitative easing? That's like
Liquidating
taking a
it.
printer and just pointing it out a window and just going, money is out the window. It's like, what is going on? And so I was like, blew my freaking brain open. I'm like, oh my God, this is so bananas. And so, I started, having other day jobs, while I was exploring this whole Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin, grows, and then Ethereum happens, and you have programmable money, and I'm like, all these other, and then privacy coins, Monero comes out. I'm like, holy, this is really important. And I started seeing all these different cryptocurrencies as different, solving different use cases. So I'm not like a
Yeah.
maximalist. I am not a maximalist. I'm not like it's only Bitcoin. I'm like a product person. So I'm thinking here's a product market fit for that. Here's a product market fit for that. And this is this. And you need this sometimes. You sometimes need that. And so I just started down that rabbit hole. And then before long, I'm like, oh, I could actually make a living doing this, and I want to do it. And so, I started working with different open source projects. Um, and then eventually, the most latest gig that I've been at for like maybe like 5 years now is like working with Onero. It's like, what if you
Hmm.
could make crypto that's aware of market conditions and adjusts its issuance accordingly? It's like, oh, that's a cool idea. And then DeFi comes along. It's like, what if you could create something that that leverages the creator economy, which never existed until 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, or 10 years ago, whatever you want to say. And it's like, how can you solve problems? How can you build something on top of decentralized finance that empowers content creators to be more directly connected with their customers and patrons and fans and consumers? And I'm like, oh, I'm all on that. So it's been this ongoing lifelong quest. I think if the common thread for me is just finding ways that technology can be used to make things more transparent, more disintermediated, removing middlemen,
Yep.
more decentralized, being more robust and resistant to censorship,
Yeah.
and have it be a voice for the people, not the few pulling the
Right.
strings.
And
Because I'm not a
so I wanted to tell you because you're one person that would understand this and appreciate it. So I know we talked about it probably about a year ago. I had the idea about building out like a social platform on blockchain that was
mm,
100% blockchain, purely decentralized, running on its own with zero servers and have it work. Well,
yeah,
it's done. And it's actually live.
nice.
And I haven't really like promoted it yet, but we even have, because I knew it really wouldn't work until it's important, but we got it on a mobile app. So it's actually in the iOS App Store right now. It's called
Oh,
Cthulhu with a
cool.
K.
I got an
I'll send you
iOS
a link
phone
for you.
somewhere
Play
here. Wait, I got so many phones. Here's an iOS phone. Here we go. I'll try this one. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd love to. I'd love to.
And
Please.
because the whole point is building, like, your wallet is your identity. And what we wanted to do is, on the surface, it works and functions like Twitter, right? So you can send social messages. It's impossible to censor because everything is 100% blockchain. It's running on the Polygon.
I love it.
And but we can down do push notifications from the blockchain. So if you send a message, you're gonna get ding, hey, I got a message from someone, purely Web3, all 100%
That's
of it.
beautiful, dude.
And that was kind of what I spent a year building the whole project out, was just to get a push notification to my phone if someone sends me a message on the blockchain. That's all I really wanted. And what it really is, though, is it's a messaging bus for blockchain. Twitter is just an application that's built on top of it to show what it can do, but it's literally a messaging bus for any type of blockchain.
Well, that's like
what
we were talking about before. Like crypto is the rails for stuff.
Exactly.
This is what done it.
Yep.
That's fantastic, man. Congratulations.
So I'm pretty excited about it. I think all of about 4 people will probably use it, but it's one of those things where it's like, I feel
5.
like this is something
Sign me
that
up.
needs.
I mean, I don't know where to.
Yes.
Tell me how to get it. I'll play with. I want to play with it. Please. This is how these things start. You got to.
It's kuthulu.xyz is the website, but you can just look up Cthulhu on the iOS App Store, spelled the same way.
Gotcha. So
I'll send it to
Cthulhu,
you.
lies dreaming, forever, but spelled with a K instead of a C.
Yeah. And it's it's just one of those things. It's just larger than you can imagine. Provides.
Well, I think you sent me that a while ago. I think you said, like, I'm working on this thing, and I remember looking at it, like, it's kind of cool. It wasn't ready yet.
Very rough. No,
I remember I'm like, he seems like an H.P. Lovecraft fan, which is cool. Which is, I don't know if you can see my camera here, but that's a bust of H.P. Lovecraft.
Oh, rad.
H.P. Lovecraft bust. Because
I'm
a big fan.
awesome.
An artist friend of mine.
He's close to Boston, Rhode Island, I believe, is where he's
Providence,
from, right?
man. Yeah. Providence is home of H.P. Lovecraft. Love his crazy.
He's
not so much
mind.
his weird kind of racist brain part, but that's fine. He was.
I didn't even know about that part, honestly. I just read his
book.
books.
Well, a lot of. You scratch the surface of, like, a lot of at least mine, like, literary heroes, and it's like, well, that person was kind of an asshole. That kind of way of the life, but again, people are also being a product of the times. Oh, that's not an excuse, but at the same time, it's just, like, weird. But so yeah, there's been, so I love that there's a correlation between, like, the old ones and your product. That's cool. Nice.
Cool, man. I'm not sure what else to talk about. I mean, this has been. I feel like I just got to talk to one of my child, like, heroes. So this has been super awesome for me.
Thank you for your kind words. But I was just in the right place at the right time, and I am humbled and amazed by, like, what all of the people who were touched by this expanding. It's just like I felt like I was just there at the right time, going, "Hey, I'm gonna light this fire. Let's see what happens."
I'm so glad you lit that fire, because I saw that fire burning, and then it caused me to want to light a fire, and then I've caused other people to want to light fires.
That's what I always love hearing. My favorite thing is to hear about how people who've, like, been kind of, who've been, activated by this thing, this L0pht thing, and then have continued to, like, light other fires. It's like, and then they light a fire in someone else. And then I talked to somebody who's like, yeah, I was, my fire was lit by this person, whose fire was lit by this person, whose fire was lit by this person who hung out at the L0pht. I'm like, oh my God, that's awesome. That's why, it's that chain of positive fire spreading. And I'm just so psyched too that, like, you're in this whole blockchain DeFi space too, because we need people like you with that mentality in the space, because it's not about the crypto bros who are like, how can I make something where number go up, NGU,
exactly.
And you're, like, got the right ethos. That's what attracted me to the whole crypto space. It's like, I'm not a crypto bro, I'm not a Wall Street dude. I'm like, let's make this thing to, like, radically change the way the world works in an awesome way. And play with hardware too at the same time. Get to play with hardware. It's that's a Antminer S7, I think. An old Antminer S7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that I couldn't bear to throw away.
Something tells me you have a shed full of equipment somewhere.
I have a basement. Dude, I have a whole basement, and it's Canada
Oh
too,
wow,
right?
look at
So
that.
everything's cold in Canada, so it's like, oh, there's my dog Stella. Hey, girl. Yeah, it's a. Oh, it's an S7. Yeah, it's an
Oh,
S7.
there
A
you
bit
go.
my Aunt Minor S7, and it's like every time I look at it, I go, "Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, veteran. But you have been retired many years ago." And it's just thank you for your service. But I don't want to throw it away because it's like a historical artifact. But this
Dude,
is how
I
the loft
have
started.
bins
It's like
full
I
of
can't
stuff
throw it
in my
away.
garage that I
Yeah, it's
cannot
like
get
this
rid
is how the
of.
loft started. It's like John's basement is like his still remnants of. It's like down there. I've got things you wouldn't believe, crypto related and otherwise too. But it's a historical artifact. Who knows? Maybe I'll turn it on someday if I just want a space heater. That
It's an
sounds like
expensive
a
space
rocket
heater.
engine. It's like, but yeah, she's not gonna pay for herself anytime soon, or pay for her electricity, not even that anymore. But I'm just so excited that you're in this space, Adam. It's just like this kind of stuff that you're doing personally and professionally is what the whole blockchain space needs so
Yeah.
badly, because it needs that hacker
And
mentality.
I'm starting a new project now that Cthulhu's done, and
Oh, cool.
I think you'll like that as well. I'll tell you more a little bit more offline. But
Okay, cool.
basically, I feel, and I think a lot of the world is at a point where our privacy has been slowly stripped away to where we don't control it anymore, and it's just now we're screwed with AI and facial rec and permanence of things being online,
Oh
screen
God, yeah.
time, phones being plastered to people's faces all the time, and I feel like everyone's like, "What are we gonna do?" Like, there's just no way you can't fix that problem. We're gonna just tell everyone not to use a phone anymore; it just won't work. So
Yeah,
I've come up
yeah.
with a way to solve that problem. I feel like, and get everyone back to how we used to do things back in the day and make the
Nice.
internet great again. I don't think that's a
Nice.
good slogan to use, but
Yeah, like you gotta stay apolitical in this space
yeah,
too. It's like,
exactly. Like,
yeah, we're gonna do this, but we're not taking political sides. We're trying to
no,
remain politically
it's just
neutral. Just
politics is the farthest thing from what we're doing. It's like we just want to make awesome
nice.
tech for people to use and have fun. But yeah, so I think we have a really good way to protect people's privacy with the advent of AI and the tech and get people out of their phones and back into real life again
That would be
without
awesome,
inhibiting
dude.
them. So I'm pretty stoked on what we got coming about.
Damn. So it's about. Okay, I need to learn more about this, but that's
Just think of it this
I
way.
think.
Let's say remember what it was like when you used to go out to hang out at a party or a bar and go to your friend's place and you just had fun, uninhibited fun. And why? Because everyone didn't have a camera in their pocket, right? You didn't
Oh
have to
God,
worry
yeah,
about being recorded and blasted and taken
yeah,
out of
yeah, yeah,
context, and then everyone
yeah.
has an opinion. Everyone's taking a selfie, and no one's paying attention to each other. Everyone's on their
Selfies.
phones,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So I feel like I may have come up with a solution. I have a whole working proof of concept actually, which is pretty
Nice.
rad. And but imagine being able to have all the capabilities of your phone, everything you can do with your phone and the internet, but you never have to worry about your face ever showing up in people's pictures. You never have to worry about being posted online unless you chose to. You never have to worry about being glued to your phone because it's no longer going to want to notify you all the time, but only when it's massively important. So
Interesting.
it's pretty cool. But yeah, we'll go into a little bit more because it's being fleshed out. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just
I'd love
but
to.
this whole thing stemmed from you guys. That's when I saw other people pushing the boundaries and just trying to make things cool and bring that collective together. I was like, man, like I want to do that, and I still do it to this day. I
That's
can't
awesome,
not do
dude.
it.
There, you're part of the loft. You're in it. We're all
Yeah.
we're all in it.
Awesome. I'm gonna
That's
get a. I'm
awesome.
gonna get a little. I'm definitely gonna make myself a loft shirt now. I'm gonna start telling that around
Yeah,
on my next.
do it.
Hopefully, I'll get it by my next podcast. I'll wear it. I'll
I
let you
gotta
know.
find I gotta find the original clip art somewhere. I got it somewhere. Like, I mean, I can't read the files anymore because it's Corel Draw. It's like
I was
dot
saying, like,
CDR. I'm like, it's dot CDR. What the fuck's dot CDR? It's Corel Draw.
yeah,
And of course it was a pirated version that I had used from some
of course it was.
Ware's website that I downloaded.
Wares.
But yeah, and I would love I mean, and also, like I've been talking so much during this about the loft and stuff, but I mean, I would love to, learn more about like what you're working on. Like I had all these questions I want to ask you too. But it's been an hour and 45 minutes, but
Holy shit! This is the longest podcast we've ever done. Oh, also, I mean, we said at the beginning, but this is our 100th podcast, which
that's
I'm
freaking
pretty stoked
awesome.
about because we started about a year ago, and I was like, we just got to start. We just got to start talking, and because I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of great, smart people out there and I'd love to. I personally want to be selfish, and I would love to be able to use this as a tool to get to talk with amazing, cool people. So
Yeah, yeah. But I think, I mean, it sounds like you're working on some really cool stuff, and I'd love to.
yeah, I mean, I'm
If
down to
there's
meet
ever
up
opportunity to
anytime,
come
man.
back again. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you know, and then if people are like, if you want to learn more about John's background in the loft, listen to that podcast. That's where he just talks about all this stuff he was doing back in the day. Catch up, freaking catch up on that, and then now we're going to talk about like what's happening new, you know, because
yeah,
there's the stuff on the horizon, man. And I'd love to just like jam with you about
I'm
like where the
totally
hell is
down to do that
AI,
because
where AI is going. It's like,
it's
you know,
to me, it's exciting and terrifying at the same time because I'm afraid of what, like, there are bad actors. So what are those bad actors going to do? And
yeah,
now I'm already thinking like, okay, how do we make systems to prevent what those new bad actors are going to be doing, and be as
yeah.
be proactive on that, and
Without
then how to
nerfing the features of
right,
AI. It's like you don't want to
exactly,
make
like
AI
AI is
dumb. You want to make
amazing.
you
Yeah,
can't do that. It's fire. AI is fire. You can't
exactly.
say, well, we're going to reduce the way fire spreads. It's like, no, that's not how you solve
No,
the problem. That's how you fuck up
no.
fire and make it useless. What you do is you got to figure out how to deal with what AI is doing
Yep.
and go after the bad actors, not the core
Right.
technology of
And
AI.
if we can
Yeah,
if we can use AI and we can use it in a way to where we get all of its benefits, but we understand the risks and we are
yes,
aware of them and able to start then working on building security against those risks. Like it's always going to be a
exactly.
cat and mouse game. It's never going to end. No matter what tech you put out, someone's going to say, "How can I hack that for fun?" And
Yeah,
another person's going to say, "How can I hack that for monetary or social gain?" So
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
never going
exactly.
to stop. So it's a
Yeah,
matter of just keep playing the
yeah.
game.
Yeah, and I think and a quick aside, maybe there's a future podcast you should do some AI stuff. That would be cool. But like um
Maybe I'll do like a panel, get like you and a couple other fun people,
yeah,
and just
yeah.
talk future of AI and what's going on in the
Yeah,
world.
and it's interesting because I think a lot about because my background, you go back into to John's background all the way back, and it's really around neuroscience and the brain, right? That's where I spent
Hmm.
a big chunk of my career, my evolving career, you know, was like working in neuroscience, you know, like maybe 15 years or so doing that. Um and I always think about the augmentation of the human mind, how technology I was very grateful at a point in my life where I actually got to hang out with and collaborate with Doug Engelbart.
Who's
Doug
that?
Engelbart's the guy who invented this thing, the mouse.
Oh, okay.
He's the one who did the mother of all demos. He, you know, where he
Oh,
basically built
yes.
the modern workstation. Yeah, Doug
If
Engelbart.
anyone hasn't, that's watch that online. For people that don't know the mother of all demos, watch that on YouTube.
Google the mother of all demos. That's the dude, Doug Engelbart.
Yeah,
And it's like it's interesting because like his invention of the mouse is just like a tiny thing that he did along the way of his all
yeah.
this other stuff that he invented. But it's what everyone remembers. It's like, who invented the mouse? Yeah, it's Doug Engelbart. And and um and a funny aside too, like for a while, like Logitech like donated like a huge office space just for him to do stuff in because they're like, dude, we worship you,
Yeah,
dude. You made it, and you just let the tech out there, let anyone make mice. That's our whole
yeah,
business. Please have an office space, courtesy of Logitech.
yeah.
So, but and he was always talking. You know, when we would talk, he would always talk about like the augmentation of the human mind, and I would get excited because I'm like, Doug, I'm working in neuroscience. I'm all about how the brain has this ability to take tools and make tools extensions of yourself.
Hmm.
Like that's what Marshall McLuhan would always talk about: extensions of the mind, extensions of self. That's what technology is. And I think what AI is coming along as is an incredible new extension that's at a higher cognitive level. It's almost like a third hemisphere of your brain if people use it right. Because I've seen people and myself experience like using AI tools to do things, and it's like an extension of my mind. It's like, well, I want to describe this, and I've written this thing, and I need this edit. Okay, I want to ask AI to clean it up in this certain way, and then it's done. It's like, wait,
Yep.
that's like so seamless. It's like our minds are designed, not designed, well, depending on if you know what you believe in, but our minds are built. Our minds are built to be able to like integrate with other technology and really other minds because the hemisphere, you know, we have this, you know,
Right.
corpus callosum connects these two hemispheres. Like our idea of like our identity being a singular thing is an illusion. Our identity is a symphony playing, and it's like coordinating the right hemisphere with the left
100%.
hemisphere,
Mhm.
and and what emerges is a consciousness and a singular identity, but in the background, it's all of music. And so like the AI is like this new thing that you can plug in and you can talk to it. You can communicate with it visually. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
AI, look at this picture of me. How do I feel? You know what I mean? So it's like this level of communication. The point being, I think that like we're going to not only be designing amazing new tools that use AI, but we're going to be making them part of our lives in ways that we haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah.
You know,
To me,
we're
this is
gonna,
like the internet again. This is a whole new realm of holy shit. Where is this gonna
yeah,
go?
yeah. The internet is basically like, okay, now global communication, like that changes
Yeah.
how people think. Think about for a moment how the way you think has changed because of the internet.
Oh, yeah. Massive.
The
I
things
wouldn't be
that
the
you've
same
like,
person at all.
yeah, exactly. People think with the internet. This is why when people go like on vacations and it's like I had no access to the internet, I felt stupid. I felt like I was like I had a stroke or something. I felt
Yeah.
like there's something weird. I can't look stuff up on Google. That's part of how I think now. I can't communicate with people rapidly. That's part of how I collaborate normally. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about using the internet to consume mindless doom scrolling
Yeah.
crap,
No, exactly.
but
It's the
the real
connectiveness.
use is, yeah, the
But also, there's a
communicating.
fake connectiveness because
Well,
the internet
that's
connectiveness is replacing real connectiveness, which I think is
that's the
causing damage to
danger. You're
people.
totally
And like
right.
with
And
my
then,
kids, like just last night, I threw my daughter a very simple math problem, right? And she's like, hold on, let me grab my phone. I'm like, no, you can
yeah,
do this in your head. She's like, can I just get pen and paper? I'm like, no, you can do this in your head.
yeah,
And I'm
pen
like,
and
I'm
paper's a tool
forcing her. And it's
too.
like you could see she's sitting there going, but I could just get at the answer.
Yeah, it's like she's had a stroke. It's like part of her brain is
Yeah,
gone. And
exactly.
so there's like a good side. Again, it's a double-edged sword, right? There's the good and the
Yep,
bad, and so,
absolutely.
personally, I think, and this probably speaks to this tool that you've got,
Yeah,
that you were hinting at, that allows you to have, not have to worry about being posted on social media, which sounds great.
yep.
But like, I think we're doing this huge social experiment with, in particular, kids right now,
Oh,
on like where all of
terrifies me.
their, yeah, it's an experiment. We don't know.
Yeah,
The definition of an experiment is where you do something, you change some
yeah,
variables, and you wait to see what happens because you don't know what the hell is going to happen. You have a theory, but
right.
most of it is just like sit back and just see what happens.
Well, yeah, because
And
like
that's
I
what we're
struggle
doing.
with my kids. I'm like, okay, so I want them to be technology sound. I mean, look at me. I'm surrounded by the latest and greatest tech, and I'm always talking about with them and working with them and
Yeah.
stuff. But at the same time, I'm like, go outside and play. Get off the computer. Get off
Yeah.
these things and go do stuff. But I'm like, am I inhibiting my kid now, or am I enhancing my kid now? It's like, well, we'll find out in about 10 years when.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of, you're going to have some unforeseen things happen, and those
Yep.
unforeseen consequences will be both good and bad, and also at the same time incomprehensible to those of us who didn't go through that transformation.
Right.
It
And I
will
feel
it
like
will be like unbelievable.
it's important to for me. I've kind of resulted with I just need to make sure that they have really good decision making capabilities, that they
That's
can do
dude.
research, find the
That's
right
awesome.
answers through all the crap that's out there. And if they can take those two things, I feel that no matter where the world goes, they'll be able to be competent enough to be successful in whatever that is that they want to do.
That's and hence we have come full circle to the very beginning, talking about hacker culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
It's
Now I'm
like
hacking my kids.
it's learning, yeah, hacking your kids and giving them the basic tools, because being a hacker is not about what you know, it's a way of learning and a way of seeing
Right.
the world
Like
and moving through it.
the best
As new
advice
tech
I've
comes
ever
along,
received was from
do it.
this guy. Was another postal worker, and I was like, "Hey, this guy's into computers, kind of like you are. I'm gonna drop you off at his house because I think you're gonna get along great with this guy." And I'm like, 14 years old, getting dropped at this like 40-year-old guy's house. Like nowadays,
It's a little
it's like you're just gonna hang out in
sketchy.
this dude's basement for like 2 hours. You'll be fine, So it's like
Yeah, have some
that would
candy.
never happen today, but
Have a
but
drink.
so like,
Sometimes it
yeah,
sinks to the
exactly.
bottom, the drugs. Make sure you get it all. Sometimes it sinks to the
Yeah,
bottom.
have you ever had whiskey? Don't worry, don't tell your mom. No, but
It's like
so
drinking fire.
yeah. So he was an old school hacker guy, and I learned a lot from him. But he drove me back to my house too. And while he's driving me back, he's like, look, you've realized one thing today, which you need to remember. And obviously still remember this to this day, is that once you realize that you know nothing, that's when you know something. And then is like then that sparks that
Very,
curiosity.
it's also very
So
zen.
Yeah, it's like it's so true because it's like once you realize it's like, man, I don't know stuff, but I want to know everything. I want to learn more. You have that
Yeah.
hunger of knowledge, and there's an unlimited amount out there. I feel like the internet's gotten polluted nowadays. It's not the same where it was just a treasure trove of information and sharing of data and
Yeah.
openness, and
It's a
now
lot of
it's
noise.
kind of garbagey. But
The signal
I'm
to
aiming
noise
to solve
ratio
that.
is out of whack. Yeah, the
That's
signal
what
to
we're gonna
noise ratio
solve.
is out of whack, and people are unfortunately getting used to having no privacy and having like, well,
Yeah,
yeah, I guess my
and
face is going to be everywhere.
I do not. And the thing is, it's like I was on the train coming home from a concert a couple weeks ago, and it's one of those things where my brain was totally thinking about something completely different. I was watching a Machine Head show and just having a great
Mm,
time,
nice.
hanging out with my wife, and then all of a sudden it just hit me because I've been struggling with this problem forever. It's like I want I want my privacy. I'm 7 feet tall, so every time I go somewhere, like today, I went to go get a bagel this morning at the store right around the corner. I walked in to get a bagel, got a bagel, walked out. I had to talk to 5 different people, tell them how tall I am, what my
Mm.
parents do, what I do for a living. No, I don't play basketball. And it's like I have to do
Yeah.
this everywhere I go. Everyone takes pictures of me. I have to sign autographs sometimes. It's bizarre being me
Wow.
because it's like it makes no sense to me because I didn't
I had
do
no idea you
anything
were
to
so
these
tall,
people.
dude.
Yeah. So
But oh,
I've
how would I
always,
know? How would I know?
yeah,
I
exactly.
know.
Well, I've only ever met through this way.
Yeah,
So
that's cool. But
so
but
like
weird.
for me, I want privacy, and I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want my kids showing up in the back and other people's photos being posted online. It's like, well, I don't know where this is going, what's going to happen 20 years from now, because this photo is going to be there forever. And
yeah.
what's that going to mean? I don't know. And it's like unless I choose to want my face online and people taking my picture like inadvertently, it's like I don't want my picture taken all the time. And it's like I think people have gotten away from that. Like, oh well, what are you trying to hide? It's like I just don't. I just won't want to be online all the time, man. It's like it's not.
Yeah,
I'm trying
that's
to
the
hide.
wrong. That's always the what is it? Yeah. People who say like, "Oh, what are you trying to hide?" It's like it's the same people who are like, oh, it's the wrong question. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it's just a way
100%.
of it's the wrong
It's like,
question to ask.
yeah, you're looking at this from the wrong side. Okay. Don't
Yeah,
think
the
of it as
question
like
is,
a
do you want everyone to know this thing? The
right.
question is, what do you have to hide? The question is, do I want the world to know my face everywhere I go? That's the
Yeah.
question.
Like I asked, there's this my wife's friend. She's younger, and she was the same thing. Like, well, if you have nothing to hide, who really cares? Like, who if someone wants to watch you do something, who cares? And I was like, let me ask you this: how comfortable would you be if I said, hey, there's going to be this guy, I'm just going to pay this dude, and he's going to walk around with a video camera and just videotape you doing everything you do all day, every day. Are you comfortable with that? She's like, no,
Yeah,
that's weird. I'm like, well, that's exactly what's happening.
yeah,
It's just in
yeah,
periodic moments. Like, what's the difference? She's like, well, I guess there isn't one. I'm
yeah,
like, right.
yeah. And I'm gonna. It's been 2 hours. I do have to leave in a minute. But one last thing I was thinking of because you just triggered something in my head is that the thing that people sometimes fail to realize right away is they're like, well, I'm in a coffee shop. Someone takes a picture of me.
Right.
My name's not associated with that picture. They're not going to know it's me. What the hell? They put that on the internet. Who is that person? Who knows?
Yep.
The danger is in the correlation of large data sets. The danger is when you correlate. Okay, this is a picture of this person I saw, and then you do an AI reading
Yep.
the face. It's like, oh, now I've also found online this other picture, and it's the LinkedIn profile for Adam Cowan. And then
Yep.
you correlate. You're like, oh, so this unknown person is Adam Cowan.
Yep.
And then your privacy is gone. And then you
And
correlate
here's
even
his
more data
kids.
set.
Here's their
And you
friends. Here's the
correlate,
people he
yeah,
hangs
you
out with.
correlate the friends, and then you correlate that with GPS data. And you're like,
Yep.
oh, okay, so if he works at this place, then there's a 90% likelihood that this IP address belongs to him. And then you start correlating. And once you do enough
Yes.
correlation, then you're like, then nothing is, then you know everything about someone and things that you shouldn't know, really.
Yeah.
And the danger too around there too is um what is AI really good at in addition to pattern recognition is in correlating things.
Oh yeah.
You can just
100%.
feed AI data sets and be like, find correlations between these data sets. And
I
it's just
wouldn't
like,
be
yeah, here you
surprised if a jailbroke chat GPT, you put in someone's face and said, who is this? It could 100% come back with a full bio.
yeah, I could assemble a whole dossier on somebody. I mean,
Yeah.
there are already AI tools out there for the public where you basically feed it 10 pictures of somebody and it'll find that person on the
Yep.
internet anywhere. It's
Yeah.
uh it's like
But
there's
we're going to
systems out
solve
there
that
for it.
problem.
Good, because it's a oh shit the fire can burn down a house problem.
Yeah,
How do we solve?
exactly.
You're solving the problem of like, how do we prevent fire from, burning down your home and killing everyone in it? Okay,
Right.
fire extinguishers, fire smoke detectors, fire extinguishers, flame retardant thing. Like that's what if you solve for that, dude, then you're
Yep.
you're solving the how can I prevent AI from burning my house down problem.
And that's what I want to solve. And
Yeah.
I feel like I may have stumbled into something that allows that to happen. So
Nice.
I'm
Well, I'm
pretty excited.
intrigued.
Pretty,
You
pretty
had
geek
what
out.
is it? You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Well, we'll save that for the next podcast.
All right, cool.
And I'm going to let
Dude.
you go. I've consumed too much of your time. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been awesome. Thank you for joining the 100th episode of Nyedis Anarchy Series. It's been a pleasure to have you and talk really awesome, fun historical tech with you. So thank you very much.
The pleasure is mutual. The feeling is mutual, and thank you for this opportunity. And I look forward to watching your other podcasts and learning about your projects, and talking more with you about this stuff because there's a lot to. The world's changing fast, and we all have to pay attention to make sure it changes 100%. The way we want it to change.
That's it. That's exactly true. So thank you very much,
Cool.
man. I
All right.
can't wait till the next time I get to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise, man.